On my wedding day, my mother sent a text with just 6 words: "Don't expect anyone." I walked down the aisle facing empty chairs while my family partied in Hawaii. But 3 days later, she was pounding on my front door, screaming about a declined credit card. She thought she could skip my big day without consequences, forgetting I was the one holding the keys to the family fortune. My name is Olivia Harper, and I was 31 years old when I learned that silence is actually the loudest sound in the world. I was standing in the bridal suite of a historic inn in Savannah, Georgia. I had chosen this place specifically for its atmosphere. I wanted the Spanish moss draping over the oaks outside, the smell of jasmine in the humid air, and that heavy, sweet feeling of old Southern charm. I lived in Denver, Colorado, where the air was thin and sharp and the mountains made you feel small. But for my wedding, I wanted to feel held. I wanted warmth. I wanted the kind of family history that you read about in novels. Even if my own reality was far more jagged, the room was perfect. The wallpaper was a soft, dusty rose, and the floorboards creaked with a comforting familiarity. I was adjusting my veil in the antique mirror, trying to ignore the way my hands were trembling. It was typical wedding jitters. I told myself, just the nerves of a bride about to walk into the rest of her life. Then my phone buzzed against the marble vanity. It was a single vibration, short and dismissive. I picked it up, expecting a message from a bridesmaid or perhaps a last-minute vendor question. The name on the screen said, Mom. My heart gave a little jump. I thought maybe she was texting to say they were close, or that she was sorry for being late to the pre-ceremony photos. My mother, Darla Harper, was chronically late. It was her power move. She liked to make an entrance. I swiped the screen open. There were no emojis, no exclamation points, no apologies, just 3 words that hit me harder than a physical blow. Don't expect anyone. I stared at the screen. The time was 4:45 in the afternoon. The ceremony was scheduled to begin in 15 minutes. My brain refused to process the information. It did that thing where it tries to protect you by rejecting trauma instantly. I laughed. A short, breathless sound that bounced off the high ceilings. Don't expect anyone. What did that mean? Did it mean they were stuck in traffic? Did it mean the shuttle bus from the hotel had broken down? Classic Darla, I whispered to the empty room. Always so dramatic. I convinced myself it was a figure of speech. She probably meant, don't expect anyone to be sober, or don't expect anyone to be on time. They were coming. Of course they were coming. My father, Ray, had paid for the deposit on the venue 6 months ago, loudly proclaiming to the manager that only the best was good enough for a Harper. My brother, Logan, had sent me a text 2 days ago asking about the open bar policy. My Aunt Tessa had bought a dress specifically for this event that cost $600. You do not spend $600 on a dress to stay home. I put the phone down. I smoothed the front of my silk gown. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of hairspray and expensive perfume, and walked out of the suite. The coordinator was waiting for me at the top of the stairs. She looked at me with a tight, professional smile that did not quite reach her eyes. At the time, I thought she was just stressed. In hindsight, I realized she had probably peeked into the garden courtyard. She knew. "Ready, Olivia?" she asked. "Ready," I said. My voice sounded steady. I was proud of that. We walked down the historic staircase and out into the garden. The air was thick, carrying the scent of magnolia. The string quartet began to play. It was not the traditional wedding march. I had chosen a specific acoustic version of a song Evan and I loved. It was soft, melodic, and hopeful. The double doors to the courtyard opened. I stepped into the frame, clutching my bouquet of white peonies so hard I thought I might snap the stems. I looked up, ready to make eye contact with the people who had raised me. I was ready to see my mother dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. I was ready to see my father looking proud in his tuxedo. I was ready to see Logan making a stupid face at me from the front row. I looked to the left. The rows were full. Evan's family was there. His parents, retired school teachers from Ohio, were beaming. his friends from the university, his colleagues from the public high school where he taught history. They were all there, shoulder to shoulder, a sea of warm smiles and teary eyes. Then I looked to the right. It was a physical shock, like stepping off a curb you did not know was there. The chairs were white, wooden, and perfectly aligned. There were 10 rows on the bride's side, and every single one of them was empty. There was nobody, not my mother, not my father, not Logan, not Aunt Tessa, not my cousins, not even the distant relatives I had obligated to invite. The emptiness was aggressive. It wasn't just a lack of people. It was a presence in itself. The late afternoon sun slanted across the vacant white chairs, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air where my family should have been. The silence from that side of the aisle was deafening. The only thing occupying the space meant for the Harper family were the silk ribbons tied to the aisle seats, fluttering gently in the breeze. I froze. For one heartbeat, I stopped walking. The guests on Evan's side started to notice. I saw heads turning. I saw the confusion rippling through the crowd like a wave. I saw Evan's mother lean forward, her hand covering her mouth. The whisper started in my head, vicious and familiar. You are not enough. You have never been enough. But then I looked at the end of the aisle. Evan Hart was standing under the archway of flowers. He was wearing a navy blue suit that we had picked out together. He wasn't looking at the empty chairs. He wasn't looking at the confused guests. He was looking directly at me. Evan was the kind of man who didn't understand the games my family played. He was solid. He was kind. He taught 11th grade history and coached the debate team. He believed in facts, in kindness, and in showing up. And he was standing there, his jaw set hard, his eyes locked on mine with an intensity that anchored me to the earth. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. Keep walking, his eyes said. I am here. I took a breath that rattled in my lungs, and I forced my right foot forward, then my left. I walked past the empty chairs. I walked past the void where my mother should have been judging my hair. I walked past the space where my father should have been preparing to give me away. I walked alone. The walk felt like it took 100 years. I could feel the pity radiating from Evan's side of the aisle, hot and prickling on my skin. I kept my chin high. I fixed a smile on my face that felt like it was carved out of marble. When I reached the altar, Evan didn't wait for the officiant. He stepped forward and took both of my hands. His hands were warm and dry. He squeezed my fingers so hard it almost hurt, and the pain was grounding. You look beautiful, he whispered. He didn't say, where are they? He didn't say, I'm sorry. He just told me I was beautiful. The ceremony proceeded exactly as planned. We said the vows we had written. We exchanged rings. We kissed. We signed the marriage license to an outsider, or perhaps to the photographer who was carefully framing shots to avoid the empty right side. It looked like a wedding, but inside me, there was a cold, expanding hollow. It felt like someone had scooped out my insides with an ice cream spoon. I was functioning on autopilot. I was Olivia, the CFO, the woman who managed complex financial portfolios for a living. I treated the wedding like a crisis at work. Compartmentalize, execute, survive. The reception was a blur of polite evasions. We had set tables for 120 guests. Only 60 were there. The catering staff moved quickly, clearing away the empty place settings at the unused tables to make the room look less like a ghost town, but you couldn't hide it. Where is your family, dear? An elderly aunt of Evan's asked me near the buffet line. She wasn't trying to be cruel. She was just old and confused. Travel complications, I lied smoothly. A terrible storm in Atlanta grounded everything. It was a lie. The weather in Atlanta was 75 degrees and sunny. I had checked my weather app while I was in the bathroom. But I couldn't tell this sweet old woman that my family had simply chosen not to come. I couldn't admit that I was that unlovable. We cut the cake. We danced. I smiled until my face ached. I drank 2 glasses of champagne, just enough to numb the sharp edges of the humiliation, but not enough to lose control. I needed to stay sharp. By the time we got back to our room, it was midnight. The adrenaline crashed. I sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, my white dress billowing around me like a deflated cloud. The silence of the hotel room was different from the silence in the garden. This silence was heavy. It was final. Evan was in the bathroom, washing his face. I could hear the water running. I was grateful for the noise. It meant I didn't have to talk yet. I reached for my phone. I hadn't looked at it since that text message at 4:45. I needed to know. The logical part of my brain, the part that managed risk and analyzed data, needed confirmation. I opened Instagram. The algorithm, cruel and efficient, put it right at the top of my feed. It was a story posted by my cousin Madison. I tapped the circle. The image filled my screen, bright and high definition. It was a selfie, taken from a high angle. The background was unmistakable. It was the golden hour on a beach in Hawaii, palm trees silhouetted against a purple and orange sky. The ocean was a perfect turquoise, and there they were. My mother, Darla, was front and center, holding a Mai Tai with a pineapple wedge. She was wearing a cream-colored linen tunic that I knew cost $400. She looked tan, relaxed, and incredibly happy. Next to her was my father, Ray, wearing a matching linen shirt, smiling that big charismatic smile he used when he was closing a deal. Behind them was my brother, Logan, giving a thumbs up, and my Aunt Tessa, laughing at something off camera. They were all wearing coordinating outfits, creams and whites, linen and silk. They looked like a catalog advertisement for a wealthy, happy family. I stared at the timestamp in the corner, posted 3 hours ago, while I was saying my vows to empty chairs, while I was trying to explain to Evan's grandmother why nobody from my bloodline was there to toast me. They were on a beach in Hawaii, 5,000 miles away, having a cocktail hour. I looked at the caption, 2 words, followed by a heart emoji, family forever. The irony was so sharp it almost drew blood. They had skipped the actual family event, my wedding, to stage a performance of family unity on a beach for social media. They hadn't just forgotten. They had coordinated this. You don't get matching linen outfits by accident. You don't book a trip to Hawaii for 6 people on a whim. This had been planned for months. They had looked me in the eye for months, nodding when I talked about the seating chart, complaining about the entree choices, all while holding plane tickets to Maui in their pockets. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and fast. I wiped it away immediately. I was not going to cry for them. I had spent 31 years crying for them, trying to be good enough, smart enough, successful enough to earn their presence. I had managed their finances. I had saved their company from tax audits. I had been the dutiful daughter who fixed everything, and this was my payment. Evan came out of the bathroom. He saw the phone in my hand. He saw the look on my face. He sat down next to me and looked at the screen. He didn't say a word. He just put his arm around me and pulled me into his chest. I leaned into him, but my mind was no longer in the room. My mind was racing, connecting dots, pulling up spreadsheets in my head. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone across the room. I tapped the reply box on Madison's story. My fingers were steady now. The trembling had stopped completely. I typed 2 words. Perfect timing. I hit send. Then I closed the app. I turned the phone off completely. I placed it on the nightstand, face down. I sat there in the silence, listening to the hum of the air conditioner. The sadness was evaporating, replaced by something much colder and much more useful. It was the feeling I got when I found a discrepancy in a ledger. It was the feeling of clarity. They thought they had ghosted me. They thought they had taught me a lesson about who held the power in this family. They thought I would come crawling back after the honeymoon, begging for forgiveness for whatever imaginary slight had caused this boycott. They didn't realize that by not showing up, they had set me free. They had broken the contract, and like any good financial officer, I knew exactly what to do when a contract was breached. I looked at Evan. "Turn off the light," I said softly. "I'm done with today." I laid my head on the pillow, but I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't worrying about how to please Darla Harper. I was thinking about bank mandates. I was thinking about authorized user agreements. I was thinking about the power of attorney documents that were sitting in a fireproof safe in my office back in Denver. They wanted a vacation? Fine. I was about to make it the most expensive trip of their lives. I did not scream. I did not throw the expensive vase of white hydrangeas against the wall. I did not call my mother to demand an explanation. Those were the reactions of a daughter, and that daughter had effectively ceased to exist the moment I walked down the aisle alone. Instead, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, my legs still buried under layers of silk and tulle. The room was dark, save for the digital clock on the nightstand and the streetlights filtering in through the sheer curtains. I reached into my overnight bag and pulled out my laptop. It was a sleek, silver machine, sticker-free and strictly utilitarian. It was the command center of my life. I opened the lid. The screen flared to life, casting a harsh blue-white glow across the darkened room. It illuminated the untouched wedding cake samples on the table and the garment bag containing Evan's suit. I navigated to the secure banking portal for Harper Coast Rentals, to the outside world. Harper Coast Rentals was a charming, family-owned business headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. We managed high-end vacation properties along the southeastern coast. We sold the image of Southern hospitality, of sweet tea on wraparound porches and linen sheets that smelled like lavender. My parents, Darla and Ray Harper, were the face of the company. They attended the Chamber of Commerce mixers. They shook hands. They smiled for the brochures. But I was the spine. 5 years ago, the company had been bleeding cash. My mother treated the business revenue like a personal piggy bank, and my father lacked the organizational skills to track invoices. When I came on board as the chief financial officer, I found a chaotic mess of unfiled taxes and mixed assets. I had saved them. I had restructured the debt, implemented digital tracking, and automated the payroll. At the time, Darla had been annoyed by the paperwork. She hated reading contracts. She hated compliance. I remember the day vividly. She had tossed a stack of legal documents onto my desk, sighed dramatically, and said, "Olivia, just handle it. I trust you. I do not want to be bothered with every little signature." So she had signed a durable power of attorney and a corporate resolution granting me full administrative rights over the financial accounts. She thought she was delegating a chore. She did not realize she was handing me the weapon that would eventually be pressed against her temple. I typed in my username and password. The system prompted me for a 2-factor authentication code. My phone buzzed. I entered the 6 digits. Access granted. The dashboard loaded. I looked at the numbers with the cold detachment of a surgeon examining an X-ray. There were 4 main accounts. The operating account, which handled payroll and maintenance, the tax reserve, the expansion fund, which was currently holding a significant amount of capital for a planned acquisition in Nashville. And finally, the discretionary expense account, the credit lines attached to the family cards. I clicked on the discretionary account. The transaction list populated. It was a live feed of their Betrayal. Grand Wailea Resort, Maui, pending, $8,400. Seaside Bistro, Maui, pending, $650. Luxury Car Rentals, Maui, pending, $1,200. I scrolled down. The charges had started hitting 48 hours ago. They had been spending money the entire time I was steaming my dress. They were burning through company liquidity to fund the vacation they took instead of coming to my wedding. I looked at the card nicknames listed next to the transactions. Darla, Platinum Corp, Ray, Executive Gold, Logan, Business Associate. They were all active. They were all authorized. I moved my cursor to the Administrative Settings tab. My hand did not shake. The emotional part of my brain was sealed off behind a blast door. I was operating purely on logic now. Logic dictated that if the company officers were absent from a critical family event due to unforeseen circumstances, then any massive spending in a luxury location could be interpreted as fraudulent activity or unauthorized use of funds. I clicked on Darla's card profile. There was a button labeled Freeze Card. I clicked it. A confirmation box popped up. "Are you sure you want to suspend this card? All future transactions will be declined." I clicked yes. I repeated the process for my father. then for Logan, then for Aunt Tessa, who held a supplementary card for marketing expenses that she mostly used for personal shopping. One by one, the status lights next to their names turned from green to red. Suspended. 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 I wasn't finished. Suspending the cards would stop them at the point of sale, but they could call the bank to reactivate them if they had the security codes. I needed to ensure they couldn't override me. I went into the master security settings. I changed the approval threshold. Previously, any transaction under $5,000 went through automatically. I lowered the limit to 0. Now, every single penny, whether it was for a stick of gum or a 5-star dinner, would require manual approval from the primary administrator, me. I opened my email client and composed a new message to our dedicated relationship manager at the bank, a man named Robert, who I had spoken to weekly for 5 years. Subject: urgent, security audit, and authorization review. Dear Robert, I am currently conducting a comprehensive internal audit of the Harper Coast Rentals discretionary accounts due to some irregularities I have flagged this weekend. Effective immediately, please place a hard hold on the cards ending in 4588, 9021, and 3365. I have temporarily suspended them via the portal, but I need you to flag the accounts for potential compromised activity. We have noticed high-value transactions originating from Hawaii that do not align with our current business schedule. Until I can verify these with the cardholders personally, please decline all further authorization requests. Do not lift these holds without a written directive from my verified email address. Regards, Olivia Harper, CFO. I hit send. The trap was set. They were 5,000 miles away from home, on an island, with a lifestyle that required a constant flow of cash, and I had just turned off the tap. Olivia? The voice came from the doorway. I looked up. Evan was standing there. He had taken off his suit jacket and tie, but he was still wearing his white dress shirt, unbuttoned at the collar. He looked exhausted. He looked at me, sitting in my wedding dress in the dark, bathed in the blue light of the laptop. He looked at the screen, then back at my face. "What are you doing?" he asked softly. He wasn't judging me. He sounded concerned, like he was afraid I was having a breakdown. I turned back to the screen. "I am handling business," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat, calm, devoid of the tremor that had been there during the ceremony. "It's 3 a.m, Evan said. He walked over and sat on the edge of the bed near my feet. "Come to sleep. Liv. Don't torture yourself looking at their photos." "I am not looking at photos," I said. "I am looking at the ledger." Evan frowned. "What does that mean?" I turned the laptop slightly so he could see the dashboard. "It means that for 10 years, I have managed every dollar this family makes. I have fixed their mistakes. I have covered their overdrafts. I have moved money between accounts at midnight so checks wouldn't bounce. I have been the safety net." I gestured to the row of red suspended icons. "I am stopping," I said. "I am stopping saving them." Evan looked at the screen. He saw the list of declined status updates that were already starting to queue up as the system processed my commands. He didn't tell me to stop. He didn't tell me to be the bigger person. He knew what they had done today. He knew the humiliation of standing at that altar while half the room whispered. "They are going to be furious," he said simply. "They should be," I replied. Consequences are usually infuriating for people who have never had to face them. I turned back to the laptop to close the browser. I was about to shut the lid when something caught my eye. It was in the pending transfers section of the expansion fund. Usually, this fund was reserved for commercial real estate acquisitions, new rental properties that I had vetted, analyzed, and approved. I knew every deal in our pipeline. We were currently negotiating for a duplex in Nashville, but that deal was weeks away from closing. But there, at the bottom of the list, was a wire transfer scheduled to clear in 72 hours. Aloha Escrow Services, pending authorization. I froze. I leaned closer to the screen. The amount was substantial. $50,000. Escrow. That meant real estate. That meant a down payment. I frowned. Aloha Escrow. The name was obvious. It was a Hawaiian title company. I had not authorized a purchase in Hawaii. We did not operate in Hawaii. Our entire business model was based on driving distance destinations in the South. We didn't have the logistics or the staff to manage property in the Pacific. I clicked on the transaction to expand the details. The beneficiary address was in Kihei, Maui. The memo line was blank, which was a violation of company policy, but the authorization code. I stared at the digital signature attached to the request. It was authorized by D. Harper, my mother. My stomach turned over. This wasn't just a vacation. You do not send a $50,000 deposit to an escrow company for a 2-week holiday. You send that kind of money when you are buying something. I quickly opened a new tab and searched for the name of the escrow company. It was real. It was a legitimate firm specializing in luxury vacation condos in Maui. My mind raced. $50,000 was a standard 10% earnest money deposit on a property worth $500,000, or perhaps a partial payment on something much larger. Why would my mother be buying property in Hawaii? And more importantly, why would she try to sneak it through the company accounts on the weekend of my wedding? She knew I monitored these accounts. She knew I would see it eventually, unless... I looked at the date the transfer was initiated. It was yesterday, the day before the wedding. She must have assumed I would be too distracted. She thought I would be on my honeymoon. She thought I would be disconnected, basking in marital bliss, too busy drinking mimosas to check the daily cash flow reports. She counted on my happiness being her cover. She had weaponized my wedding against me. She used the one day I was supposed to be off the clock to rob the company blind. "What is it?" Evan asked, seeing the change in my posture. "Liv, you look pale." "They aren't just on vacation," I whispered. The coldness in my chest spread, turning into ice. "Evan, look at this." I pointed to the Aloha Escrow line item. "She is trying to buy a condo," I said, the pieces clicking together. "She is using the company's expansion capital, money we need for the Nashville deal, to buy herself a vacation home in Maui, and she tried to slip it past me while I was walking down the aisle." I sat back, the realization hitting me with the force of a physical blow. This was why they weren't here. It wasn't just that they didn't care. It was that they were busy closing a deal they knew I would never approve. They skipped my wedding to embezzle from the company I built for them. I looked at the cancel transfer button. If I clicked it, the deal would die. The escrow company wouldn't get the funds. The contract would be voided. They would lose the property and likely face legal action from the seller. But more than that, if I dug deeper into this transaction, I had a feeling I would find more than just a rogue wire transfer. "She needs this money to clear by Tuesday," I said, thinking aloud. "If it doesn't, she is in breach of contract." I looked at Evan. She sent me a text telling me not to expect anyone. She wanted me to be sad. She wanted me to be crushed so I wouldn't be paying attention. I hovered my mouse over the transaction. I didn't cancel it yet. I wanted to see the supporting documents. I wanted to see exactly whose names were on the deed of this phantom property. I clicked Download Attachments. The file began to download. It was a large PDF. I waited, watching the progress bar. My wedding dress felt like armor now. The tears were gone. I wasn't just a scorned daughter anymore. I was the auditor, and I was about to tear their little paradise apart, $1 at a time. The sky over Denver was the color of a bruised plum. It was Tuesday morning, 3 days after the non-event that was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Outside my kitchen window, the Colorado weather was doing exactly what it always did in late spring, threatening a storm that felt personal. I was standing at the granite island, pressing the plunger down on a French press. The smell of dark roast coffee was the only thing grounding me. My husband, Evan, had already left for the high school. He had kissed my forehead at 6:30 in the morning, whispering that I should keep my phone off and try to read a book. He was worried about me. He thought I was fragile. He did not know I had spent the last 72 hours turning my grief into a forensic audit. I poured the coffee into a mug. The steam rose up, curling in the gray light. Then, The house shook. It wasn't thunder. It was a fist pounding against my front door with enough force to rattle the window panes in their frames. It was a rhythmic, violent hammering that demanded attention. Bam, bam, bam. I didn't jump. I didn't spill my coffee. I knew exactly who was on the other side of that door. A courier would have rung the bell. A neighbor would have knocked politely. This sounded like a SWAT team, or a woman who had just realized her credit limit had been reduced to 0. I took a slow sip of coffee. The pounding started again, accompanied by a muffled shout. "Olivia, open this door. I know you are in there. The car is in the driveway." I walked to the entryway. I didn't rush. I unlocked the deadbolt and turned the handle. The door flew open before I could even step back. My mother, Darla Harper, stormed into my hallway like a tropical hurricane making landfall in the Rocky Mountains. The visual dissonance was jarring. Outside, it was 50 degrees and raining. My mother was dressed for a Mai Tai mixer at the Ritz-Carlton. She was wearing a flowing silk caftan printed with bright orange hibiscus flowers. Her skin was a deep, aggressive bronze, the kind you get from 3 days of dedicated tanning oil application. Her blonde hair was blown out to perfection. An enormous gold hoop earring swung violently as she whipped her head around to look at me. She brought the smell of coconut sunscreen and expensive duty-free perfume into my house. "What did you do?" she shrieked. She didn't say hello. She didn't look at my face to see if I had been crying. She didn't ask where Evan was. She didn't even wipe her feet. "Hello, Mother," I said, leaning against the wall, crossing my arms over my chest. "How was Hawaii?" "Don't you get smart with me," she snapped, pointing a manicured finger in my face. Her acrylic nails were painted a neon coral. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. The cards, the accounts, everything came back declined." She spat the word. Declined, as if it were a slur, as if it were the filthiest thing a person could be called. "I was standing at the checkout counter of the resort boutique," she continued, her voice rising to a pitch that threatened to shatter the glass in the hallway mirror. "I had 3 silk scarves and a commemorative vase on the counter. There were people behind me, Olivia, people we might know, and the girl behind the register, some 20-year-old nobody, looked at me and said, 'I am sorry, ma'am, but the issuer has stopped payment.'" She paused for a breath, her chest heaving under the floral silk. "Do you have any idea how humiliating that is?" she demanded. She looked at me like I was a criminal, like I was trying to run a scam. She took scissors. Olivia. She took scissors and cut the card right in front of me because the system told her to capture it. I took another sip of my coffee. "That is standard protocol for compromised accounts," I said calmly. "When the bank suspects fraud, they instruct the merchant to destroy the card." "Fraud?" Darla laughed, a sharp, barking sound. "It is my company. It is my money. How dare you flag it as fraud?" "I flagged it as suspicious activity," I corrected her. "The corporate bylaws state that all discretionary spending must be approved by the financial controller. Since the board of directors, that being you and Dad, were supposedly in Atlanta for business, charges appearing from a luxury resort in Maui triggered the security algorithm." "We are not in Atlanta," she yelled. "We are in Hawaii. You knew that?" "Did I?" I asked. "I don't recall getting a memo. I don't recall an out-of-office email. All I recall is a text message 3 days ago telling me not to expect anyone at my wedding." Darla waved her hand dismissively, as if swatting away a fly. "Oh, stop it," she said. "Don't be so dramatic. It was just a ceremony. You have been living with that teacher for 2 years. The wedding was just a party. You are making a mountain out of a molehill because you need attention." The air in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. "It was my wedding," I said, my voice low. "I walked down the aisle alone. Dad wasn't there to walk me. You weren't there to fix my veil. The chairs were empty. Mom, everyone saw. Nobody cares about empty chairs." "Olivia!" she shouted. "People care about solvency. People care about reputation. Do you know what damage you have done?" Ray is stuck at the hotel trying to figure out how to pay the bill for the suite because his card was declined at breakfast. We look like paupers." She began to pace the small hallway, her gold sandals slapping against the hardwood floor. "You need to call the bank right now," she ordered. "You need to call them and tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you pressed the wrong button. I don't care what you tell them, but you get those limits lifted immediately. We have a dinner reservation at Spago tonight, and I am not going to be embarrassed again." I watched her pace. It was fascinating. In a morbid way. She was completely untethered from reality. In her mind, the tragedy wasn't that she had abandoned her daughter. The tragedy was that her credit card hadn't worked. "No," I said. Darla stopped pacing. She turned to me slowly. "Excuse me?" "No," I repeated. "I'm not calling the bank. The audit is real. I have frozen all non-essential spending until I can reconcile the books for the quarter. That includes your vacation." "It is not a vacation," she screamed. "It is a networking trip. We are meeting important people." "In swimsuits?" I asked. "On the beach? With Mai Tais?" I saw the Instagram stories. "Mom, you aren't networking. You are burning cash." She narrowed her eyes. "This is about him, isn't it? This is about that husband of yours, Evan." She said his name with a sneer. "He put you up to this," she declared. "He has been poisoning you against us for years. He is jealous. He is a public school teacher. Olivia, he makes in a year what we spend in a month. He doesn't understand how our world works, so he wants to drag you down to his level. He is not one of us." "He is my husband," I said. Stepping away from the wall, I put my mug down on the entry table with a clack. "And he showed up. That makes him more family than you have ever been." "He is a nobody," she yelled. "And you are acting like a petulant child. You think you can hold the company hostage because your feelings are hurt? You are the CFO because I let you be the CFO. I signed that paper to make your life easier, not to give you the power to starve your own mother." "You signed that paper because you were too lazy to read the invoices," I shot back. "You signed it because you wanted the money to appear by magic without having to do the math. Well, I am the one who does the math, and the math says we are bleeding." "I am your mother," she screamed, her face flushing a deep, angry red beneath the tan. "You owe me. I raised you. I gave you this career, and you are going to ruin everything over a temper tantrum?" She stepped closer, invading my personal space. I could see the sweat beading on her upper lip. "You have no idea what is at stake," she hissed. "You think this is a game? You think this is just about a hotel bill? I need that liquidity. Olivia, I need it open today." "Why?" I asked. "Why is it so urgent? You have return tickets. You can just come home." "I can't come home," she blurted out. "Not yet. I have things to sign. I have deposits to make." "Deposits for what?" I asked. "More scarves? Another vase?" "For the deal," she shouted, throwing her hands up. "For the Aloha escrow account. I have a deadline, you stupid girl. If that wire transfer doesn't clear by tomorrow, we lose the position." The hallway went silent. The only sound was the refrigerator humming from the kitchen and the rain beginning to tap against the roof. Darla froze. Her mouth snapped shut. Her eyes widened slightly, the pupils contracting as she realized what she had just said. She had mentioned the name. I looked at her. I kept my face completely blank. I needed her to think she had the upper hand, or at least that I was confused. "Aloha escrow?" I asked, tilting my head slightly. "What is Aloha escrow?" Darla blinked rapidly. She looked to the left, then to the right, avoiding my gaze. She was a terrible liar when she was cornered. She was used to lying from a position of power, where nobody dared to question her. She wasn't used to being interrogated in a hallway. "It is nothing," she stammered, her voice dropping from a scream to a frantic mumble. "It is just a vendor, a new property management vendor we are looking at, for cleaning supplies, in bulk." "You use an escrow company for cleaning supplies?" I asked flatly. "And you need a $50,000 wire transfer for bleach?" She flinched, I hadn't mentioned the amount. She hadn't mentioned the amount, but she knew that I knew something was wrong. "It is a retainer," she said, grasping for straws. "It is complicated corporate strategy. Olivia, you wouldn't understand the nuance of high-level negotiations. That is why Ray and I handle the vision, and you just handle the spreadsheets." She took a breath. Trying to regain her composure, she smoothed down her silk caftan. "Look," she said, her voice taking on that sickly sweet tone she used when she wanted to manipulate me. "Mommy is sorry she missed the ceremony, okay? I am sorry. It was a miscommunication. We thought the date was next month. We got the invitation mixed up." "The date was engraved on the invitation," I said. "And on the 6 save-the-date cards I mailed you." "Mistakes happen," she insisted. "But we can fix this. You just unlock the accounts, approve the pending wire to Aloha Escrow so we don't look bad to the partners. And when we get back, we will throw you a huge party, a real reception, at the club, with all the right people. Everyone will be there. I promise." She smiled. It was a dazzling, practiced smile. It was the smile she used to charm bankers and investors. It was the smile that had worked on me for 31 years. "Just unlock the computer, honey," she cooed. "Don't ruin the family over a misunderstanding." I looked at her. I saw the desperation in her eyes. It wasn't love. It wasn't regret. It was fear. She was terrified of losing the money. She was terrified of losing the condo she was trying to buy behind my back. "Aloha Escrow," I repeated softly. "You know, that sounds like a title company. Mom, not a cleaning vendor." Darla went rigid. "I told you what it is. Don't question me." "I am not questioning you," I said. "I am protecting you. If it is just a vendor, then it can wait until you return to Atlanta and submit the proper purchase orders. I can't authorize a wire transfer that large without a contract on file. It would be negligent." "I am the owner," she screamed, the mask slipping again. "I am ordering you to send the money." "And I am the authorized signer," I said. "And right now, I don't see a valid business reason to send $50,000 to Maui. So, the answer is no." Darla looked at me with pure hatred. It was a look I had seen her give to maids who missed a spot, or waitresses who brought the wrong wine. But she had never looked at me like that before, like I was the enemy. "You will regret this," she whispered. "You think you are so smart with your little laptop and your little teacher husband, but you are nothing without us. You are a glorified accountant, and when I get my hands on those books, I will fire you so fast your head will spin." "You can try," I said. "But right now, your card is declined, and it is going to stay declined." I walked over to the door and held it open. The cold wind blew in, ruffling her silk caftan. "Get out of my house," I said. Darla stared at me, her mouth open. She looked around the hallway, as if waiting for an audience to witness this travesty. Then she let out a sound of frustration, a guttural growl, and stomped out onto the porch. "I will be back," she yelled over the rain. "And I will bring your father, and we will see who holds the keys then." "Drive safe," I said. I slammed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door and closed my eyes. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my hands were steady. Aloha Escrow. She had confirmed it. She needed the money this week. That meant the closing date was imminent, and if she was this desperate, it meant she had already put something else on the line, something she was afraid to lose. I pushed off the door and walked back to the kitchen. My coffee was cold. I poured it down the sink. I needed to call the bank again. And this time, I wasn't just going to freeze the cards. I was going to request the full loan documentation for whatever property they were trying to buy. Because if my name was on the company accounts, and they were using company funds for a down payment, I had a legal right to see the deed. The banging on the door had stopped, but the war had just begun. The silence in my house did not last long. When you cut off the flow of money to people who have never worked for a dollar in their lives, the reaction is not a gradual realization. It is immediate, loud, and panicked. It is the sound of oxygen being sucked out of a room. My phone began to light up less than 24 hours after my mother stomped off my porch. The first domino to fall was my brother, Logan. Logan was 29 years old. He liked to call himself an entrepreneur, which in the Harper Family Dictionary meant he had a lot of ideas that cost $50,000 to start and $0 to finish. His latest obsession was a sports bar concept in Nashville. He had been bragging about it for months, telling anyone who would listen that he was going to revolutionize the honky-tonk scene. I was sitting at my dining table, which I had converted into a temporary command center. My laptop was open. A stack of old bank statements was to my left. A notepad was to my right. My phone buzzed against the wood. It was a text from Logan. "Hey Liv, the bank app is glitching. It says the expansion fund is restricted. Can you reset it? I'm with the broker." I looked at the message. I took a sip of water. I did not reply. 2 minutes later, "Liv? Seriously, I'm sitting here with the lease agreement. The guy needs the deposit wire confirmation. Pick up." 5 minutes later, "Answer the phone, Olivia." "You are embarrassing me. The broker thinks we are broke." I watched the texts roll in like a ticker tape of desperation. For years, I would have dropped everything. I would have called the bank. I would have moved funds from the tax reserve to cover him, then spent 3 nights awake figuring out how to put it back before the IRS audit. I would have saved him from looking foolish. Today, I just watched the screen. Then came the call. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message. I played it on speakerphone, my pen hovering over my notepad. "Olivia, what is wrong with you?" His voice was cracking. He sounded like a teenager who had been grounded, not a businessman. "I am in Nashville. Do you hear me? I am in Nashville. The landlord is giving me until end of business today to wire the $50,000, or he is giving the space to someone else. Mom said you locked the accounts. Unlock them. This is my future you are messing with. You are just mad about the wedding. But this is business. Don't be a witch." I wrote down on my notepad. Logan Harper. Attempted unauthorized access to expansion fund. $50,000. Nashville venture. I didn't feel guilty. I felt efficient. I realized that Logan didn't actually have a business plan. He had a bank account that I kept refilling. Without me, he didn't have a sports bar. He just had an empty building and a bad attitude. The second domino fell an hour later. It was Aunt Tessa. Tessa was my father's younger sister. She had never held a job, but she was listed on the company payroll as a lifestyle consultant, a title that meant absolutely nothing but allowed her to write off her car lease. She called me from her cell phone. I answered this one, mostly out of morbid curiosity. "Olivia?" Her voice was high and trembling. I could hear the background noise of a busy space, echoing voices, register beeps, soft jazz music. She was at a mall. "Hello, Aunt Tessa," I said. "Olivia, thank God." She sobbed. She was actually crying. "Something terrible has happened. I am at Neiman Marcus. I have the new fall collection on the counter. The sales associate." She lowered her voice to a whisper. As if sharing a state secret, she ran the company card, and it was declined. She tried it 3 times. "Olivia, there is a line behind me. A line." "I know, Tessa," I said. "I suspended the cards." "You what?" She shrieked so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "Why would you do that? I have a lunch meeting with the garden club in an hour. I need these shoes. They are for networking." "The company accounts are under audit," I said, using the corporate voice that usually made them glaze over and walk away. "All non-essential spending is paused. Shoes are non-essential." "But I am family," she wailed. "You can't audit family. Just turn it on for 10 minutes. Please, Livy. The manager is looking at me. They are going to think I am poor." "I can't help you." "Tessa," I said. "Do you have your personal debit card?" There was a silence on the line. A heavy, offended silence. We both knew Tessa didn't use her personal money for things like Neiman Marcus. She used her personal money for her secret cigarette habit and bingo nights. She used the company for the lifestyle she broadcasted to the world. "You are being cruel," she sniffed. "Your mother was right. You have turned bitter." "Goodbye, Tessa," I said. I hung up. I added another line to my notepad. Tessa Harper. Attempted personal retail transaction. Neiman Marcus. Estimated value, $2,000. It was almost funny. They were all reacting to the same stimulus, but in different ways. Logan was angry because his toy was being taken away. Tessa was crying because her costume was being taken away. Neither of them asked why I was doing it. Neither of them asked if the company was okay. They only cared that the magic plastic card had stopped working. But the third notification was the one that mattered. It was an email from Gary, our external accountant. Gary was a good man, but he was timid. He was terrified of my father. The subject line read, Urgent. Tampa warehouse payment returned. I opened it. Hi, Olivia. I don't know what is going on, but the ACH transfer for the Tampa distribution center rent came back this morning. Insufficient funds in the operating account. The landlord is threatening to lock the gates. Also, the linen supplier in Charleston just called. They are putting our next shipment on hold until they receive the past due balance of $12,000. Please advise ASAP. I tried calling Ray, but his phone goes straight to voicemail. I leaned back in my chair. This was the real damage. The operating account shouldn't be empty. I had left enough cushion in there to cover overhead for 3 months. If it was bouncing checks, that meant someone had drained it. I pulled up the ledger for the operating account. I scanned the history. There it was. 2 days before the wedding, a transfer of $40,000 out of operating and into the discretionary fund. My father had moved the rent money to pay for the Hawaii trip. He had literally taken the money meant to keep the roof over our inventory and used it to buy first-class tickets and ocean view suites. He had risked the entire logistics hub of the company for a vacation. I felt a cold knot of rage tighten in my stomach. This wasn't just irresponsibility. This was negligence. This was the kind of thing that got businesses sued and shut down. I didn't fix it. That was the hardest part. My instinct, honed over a decade of parent-pleasing, was to wire money from my personal savings to cover the rent, to call the landlord and apologize, to smooth it over so Daddy wouldn't get in trouble. Instead, I replied to Gary. Gary, I am aware of the shortfall. We are dealing with a misappropriation of funds by senior management. Tell the landlord we need 48 hours. Tell the linen supplier they will get paid when we recover the assets. Do not, under any circumstances, cover this from the tax account. I hit send. I was letting the fire burn. I was letting the smoke fill the house. Because unless they smelled the smoke, they would never stop playing with matches. My phone rang again. It was Darla. I didn't answer. She called again immediately, and again. Then the voicemail started. I listened to one. You listen to me, you ungrateful little brat. Her voice was low, shaking with a mix of fury and panic. I know you are home. I know you are reading these texts. You think you are teaching us a lesson? You are destroying this family. When your father gets back, he is going to sue you. He is going to have you arrested for theft. You will regret this. Olivia. You will die alone in that house because nobody loves a traitor. I saved the voicemail. I dragged the audio file into a folder on my desktop labeled Evidence. It was 6 o'clock in the evening when Evan came home. He walked into the dining room and saw me surrounded by paper. He saw the cold cup of tea. He saw the rigid set of my shoulders. He put his bag down and walked over to me. He placed a hand on my shoulder. They are hitting hard, aren't they? He asked. They are panicking, I said, not looking up from the spreadsheet I was analyzing. Logan lost his bar deal, Tessa got kicked out of Neiman's, and Dad stole the warehouse rent money to pay for the resort. Evan let out a low whistle. So, it is all coming down. It is all coming out, I corrected him. It was already down. We were just painting over the cracks. Evan pulled out a chair and sat opposite me. He waited until I looked at him. His eyes were kind, but serious. Olivia, he said, I support you. You know that, but I need to ask you something. What? How do you want to live? I blinked. What do you mean? I mean, after this, he said. Do you want to win the war and then go back to managing their money, just with tighter leashes? Do you want to spend the next 10 years policing them, slapping their hands every time they try to steal from themselves? Or do you want to be free? The question hung in the air. How do you want to live? For my entire adult life, my existence had been defined by their needs. I was the fixer. I was the responsible one. I was the one who stayed sober so they could get drunk. I was the one who stayed home so they could travel. Even now, in my revenge, I was still managing them. I was still revolving around their chaos. I don't want to go back, I whispered. The truth of it surprised me. I don't want to be their CFO. I don't want to be their daughter. I just want out. Then make sure this is an exit strategy, Evan said firmly. Not a negotiation. He stood up and went to the kitchen to start dinner. His words rewired my brain. An exit strategy. I looked at the laptop screen again. I wasn't just auditing them to punish them. I was auditing them to calculate the price of my freedom. I needed to know exactly what my share of the company was worth, and I needed leverage to force them to buy me out. I opened the folder for the Aloha escrow investigation. I had requested the transaction history and the contract details from the bank, citing my authority as the financial officer. The documents had arrived an hour ago, but I hadn't opened them yet because I was dealing with the Logan drama. I clicked the file. It was a purchase agreement. Property, Unit 402. The Azure Coast Condominiums. Kihei, Maui. Buyer, D. Harper R. Harper. Price, $1.2 million. I scrolled down to the payment schedule. The initial deposit of $50,000, the wire transfer I had intercepted and frozen, was due by close of business this Friday. That was in 72 hours, if the funds were not received by then. The contract stated clearly, buyer forfeits all rights to the property and is liable for a cancellation penalty of $25,000. But there was something else. A rider attached to the bottom of the PDF. I zoomed in. It was a financing contingency. It listed the assets being used as collateral for the mortgage on the remaining balance. Collateral. Primary lien on Harper Coast Rentals commercial inventory and accounts receivable. My breath hitched. They weren't just using company cash for the down payment. They were pledging the entire company's assets to secure the loan for their vacation home. They were gambling the warehouse, the inventory, and the future revenue of the business to buy a condo they couldn't afford. And they had done it without my signature. I looked at the signature line on the loan application. There was my name, Olivia Harper. It was signed in blue ink. It looked like my signature. It had the same loop on the O and the same sharp slant on the H, but I knew I hadn't signed it. I had been tasting cake fillings on the day this document was dated. My mother hadn't just skipped my wedding. She had forged my signature to leverage the family business so she could retire in style. I understood the screaming now. I understood why she had banged on my door until the windows rattled. She wasn't just mad about a declined credit card. She wasn't just worried about looking poor in front of her friends. She was terrified. Because if I didn't release that wire transfer in 72 hours, the deal would fall through. The sellers would ask questions. The bank would ask why the funds were frozen, and the forgery would be exposed to the light of day. She was 3 days away from committing a felony fraud, and I was the only thing standing between her and a prison sentence. I picked up my phone. I didn't call her. I took a photo of the forged signature on my screen. Then I texted Evan from the other room. I know how I want to live, and I know exactly how to get there. I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it The Leverage. The phone rang again. It was my father this time. I let it ring. Let them sweat. I had 72 hours to build my case, and for the first time in my life, time was on my side. The glow of the computer screen was the only light in my office. I had printed the documents. I needed to hold them. I needed to feel the weight of the paper to believe what I was seeing. My laser printer had churned out 50 pages of loan applications, credit disclosures, and guarantor agreements. I spread them out across my desk like an autopsy of my financial life. I picked up the primary document. It was a secured credit facility agreement from a lender I did not recognize, based in Honolulu. The principal amount was massive. It was designed to cover the balance of the condo purchase that the initial $50,000 down payment was supposed to secure. But a loan of that size requires a guarantor. It requires someone with a pristine credit score, a low debt-to-income ratio, and a documented history of high earnings. My parents did not have those things. Their credit was a roller coaster of maxed-out limits and minimum payments. Their income was whatever they decided to draw from the company that month. I did have those things. I looked at the bottom of page 32. There was a line labeled Guarantor Signature, and there was my name, Olivia Harper. It was written in blue ink. I grabbed a magnifying glass from my desk drawer. I felt like a detective in a noir film. But the crime wasn't a murder, it was identity theft. I hovered the glass over the signature. At first glance, it was perfect. The loop of the O was wide, just like mine. The cross on the H was high. But as I looked closer, the illusion shattered. When a person signs their name, they do it with muscle memory. It is fluid. The pen moves fast, creating tapered ends on the letters where the tip lifts off the page. This signature was not fluid. The lines were uniform in thickness. There was a microscopic shake in the upstroke of the L, a hesitation that happens when a hand is moving slowly, carefully tracing a line rather than writing a letter. The dot over the I was a perfectly round circle, pressed hard into the paper. I never dotted my I's with circles. I used a quick dash. Someone had practiced this. Someone had taken a copy of my signature, placed it under this document, and traced it. The realization made my stomach drop. This wasn't just a financial disagreement. This was a felony. Then, the memory hit me. It hit me so hard I had to sit down. It was 3 weeks ago, a Tuesday morning. The office was chaotic because we were preparing for the quarterly tax filing. My desk was buried in receipts. My mother, Darla, had breezed into my office. She was wearing a new trench coat and carrying a latte. She looked stressed, which usually meant she was bored and wanted to create drama. "Here," she had said, dropping a thick stack of papers on top of my tax forms. "I need you to sign these. It is just the annual corporate governance updates. The Secretary of State needs them by 5. I had sighed, rubbing my temples. "Can I read them later?" "Mom, I am in the middle of the payroll audit." "No time," she had insisted, tapping her manicured nail on the desk. "I am on my way to lunch with the zoning board. Just sign the back pages so I can drop them off. It is just standard liability stuff. You know the drill. Unless you don't trust me?" She had used that tone, the one that implied I was being difficult. The one that made me feel guilty for doing my job. So, I had flipped to the back pages. I saw the sticky notes with arrows saying, "Sign here." I saw the signature blocks. I didn't read the headers. I trusted her. She was my mother. I signed 3 times. Quickly. Messy scrawls to get her out of my office so I could go back to work. I looked at the document on my desk now. She hadn't filed those papers with the Secretary of State. She had slipped the loan guarantee into the stack. She had tricked me into co-signing $1 million debt while I was trying to save her company money on taxes. I felt a wave of nausea. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I reached for my phone and dialed a number I had saved years ago but never used. Sarah Jenkins, attorney at law. Sarah was a shark. She was a corporate litigator who had handled a dispute for a friend of mine. She had no ties to the Harper family. She didn't play golf with my father. She didn't go to brunch with my mother. "I need an appointment," I said. "Emergency. Today." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room in downtown Denver. The air smelled of expensive leather and sanitizer. Sarah Jenkins sat across from me. She was wearing a gray suit that looked like it could cut glass. She read the documents I had brought. She looked at the signature I had flagged. She looked at the audit logs I had printed from the bank. She took off her glasses and looked at me. "You know what this is, Olivia," she said. Her voice was calm, devoid of the pity I usually got from people when I talked about my family. "It is fraud," I said. "It is bank fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft," Sarah corrected. "If you report this to the police, your mother goes to prison, minimum 5 years, probably more given the amount." I stared at the table. Prison. The word hung in the air. I don't want to be the daughter who put her mother in jail, I whispered. I just want out. I want my name off this debt. Sarah nodded. Then we don't go nuclear yet. We go procedural. We use the bureaucracy against them. If you scream and yell, they will gaslight you. They will say you agreed to it verbally. They will say you forgot. But if we use paper, we win. She pulled a legal pad towards her. Here is the strategy, she said, writing as she spoke. 1. We file a formal affidavit of status with the lender. We state that you did not authorize this guarantee and that the signature is contested. We demand a forensic handwriting analysis. 2, she continued, we send a cease and desist to the escrow company in Hawaii. We inform them that the funds originated from a corporate account without proper board resolution, making the transaction voidable. 3, she finished, circling the last point, you resign, not verbally. You send a formal letter of resignation as the guarantor and financial officer, citing breach of fiduciary duty by the other officers. You sever the legal tie. If I do that, I said, the deal dies. The condo is lost. They lose the deposit. Sarah looked at me. They lost the deposit the moment they decided to steal it. Olivia, you aren't killing the deal. You are just refusing to be the body they step over to close it. I nodded. Do it. Draft the letters. By the time I got back to my house, the sun had set. The email from Sarah's office had already gone out. It was a masterpiece of legal aggression. It demanded an immediate freeze on all lending activity associated with my name and notified the bank that the guarantor's signature was suspect and unauthorized. I sat on my couch, waiting. It didn't take long. My phone rang. It was Logan. I answered. I put it on speaker. You selfish witch, he screamed. There was no hello, just pure, unadulterated rage. The broker just called me. He said the bank pulled the financing. He said there is a fraud alert on the file. Hello, Logan, I said. Don't hello me, he shouted. Do you know what you did? Mom is crying. Dad is throwing things. You killed the condo. That was going to be our vacation home. That was going to be the family legacy. It wasn't a legacy, I said calmly. It was a theft. You can't build a legacy on a forged signature. Logan, who cares about a signature? He yelled. It is just paperwork. We are family. You are supposed to help us. I had plans. Olivia, I was going to use that condo to host investors for my bar. I already promised people they could stay there. I closed my eyes. It was always about him. You promised people a vacation in a house you didn't own, paid for with money you didn't earn, secured by a sister you didn't invite to your life, I said. You were invited, he argued. You just made it weird. And now you are punishing us because you are jealous that we are in Hawaii and you are stuck in Denver. I am not jealous, I said. I am legally protecting myself. The bank knows, Logan. If I hadn't reported it, I would be liable for the debt. I am not going to pay $1 million for a house I am not allowed to visit. You are dead to me, he spat. You ruined my dream. I hope you are happy. The line went dead. I looked at the phone. You ruined my dream. I hadn't ruined anything. I had just stopped holding up the sky so they could pretend they were flying. Then came the text from Darla. I expected more screaming. I expected threats. But Darla was smarter than Logan. She knew that anger hadn't worked yesterday, so she switched tactics. The message popped up on my screen. My sweet girl, please ignore your father and brother. They are just stressed. I know you are hurt. I am so sorry for everything. But please, Olivia, I am begging you. We are in a bind. If the bank doesn't clear this by Friday, we lose everything. Not just the condo. They will call the other loans. The company could fold. It was the honey trap. My sweet girl. She hadn't called me that in 20 years. A second message followed immediately. I just need you to call the bank and tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you authorized it verbally, just for this week. Once we close, we can refinance and take your name off. I promise. Just help Mommy this one last time. I love you. I stared at the words, I love you. They looked alien on the screen. She was trading them like currency. She was offering me a scrap of affection in exchange for $1 million of risk. I didn't reply. 5 minutes passed. The silence stretched. When she realized the love bombing wasn't working, the mask fell off completely. The third message arrived. If you don't fix this, don't bother calling yourself a Harper anymore. You are cutting your own throat. If you don't help us, you are not my daughter. You are nothing. I read the text twice. You are not my daughter. It should have hurt. It should have been the thing that broke me. But instead, it felt like a diagnosis. I finally understood the disease that had been rotting our family tree for decades. They didn't miss my wedding because they didn't love me. That gave them too much credit. They missed my wedding because, to them, I wasn't a person with life events. I wasn't a bride. I wasn't a woman with feelings. I was a utility. I was the human equivalent of a printer or a stapler. You don't go to a stapler's wedding. You don't ask a printer how its day was. You just expect it to work when you press the button. And when it stops working, you kick it. For 30 years. I had been there walking, talking ATM and legal shield. They kept me around because I was useful. And the moment I became inconvenient, the moment I asked to be treated like a human being, they discarded me. I looked at the stack of papers on my desk, the evidence of their crime. I picked up my phone and typed a reply to Darla. You are right. I am not your daughter. I am the plaintiff. I hit send, then I blocked her number. I sat back in my chair. The room was quiet. I felt lighter than I had in years. I had lost a mother, a father, and a brother in the span of 4 days. But I had found something much more important. I had found the exit. And tomorrow, I was going to open the door and walk through it, no matter how much they screamed. Wednesday morning brought a strange kind of quiet. It was the silence of a battlefield after the artillery has stopped firing, when the smoke is still thick, but the explosions have ceased. My phone, which had been vibrating with the manic energy of my family's panic for 2 days, was finally still. I had blocked Darla. I had blocked Logan. I had routed my father's calls to a voicemail box I did not intend to check. I was sitting in my home office, staring at the dust motes dancing in a shaft of sunlight. I felt hollowed out, scraped clean of the anxiety that had defined my life for a decade. But nature abhors a vacuum, and I knew that something had to fill the space where my family used to be. Then my cell phone rang. I looked at the screen, expecting another unknown number from a flying monkey sent by my mother, an aunt, a cousin, a family friend, but the name on the display made me sit up straight. Grant Sloan. Grant was a legend in the regional real estate market. He was a commercial asset manager who had sat across the table from me during a difficult negotiation 3 years ago. My father had blustered and bragged during that meeting, but Grant had ignored him, speaking only to me because he realized within 5 minutes who actually understood the numbers. We had maintained a professional, albeit distant, respect ever since. I answered the call. This is Olivia. Olivia. Grant's voice was gravelly and warm, like worn leather. I am going to skip the pleasantries because I have a feeling you are not in the mood for them. I heard about the wedding. I winced. News travels fast. In our industry, it travels at the speed of light, Grant said. But that is not why I am calling. I am calling because I also heard about the frozen accounts. The linen supplier in Charleston is a client of mine. He told me Harper Coast Rentals is on credit hold. I felt a flash of defensive shame, the old instinct to cover for the family kicking in. We are undergoing an internal audit. Grant, it is temporary. Olivia, stop, Grant said. His tone was not accusatory. It was kind. I am not fishing for gossip. I know how that company runs. I know Ray plays the big man while you shovel coal in the engine room to keep the lights on. And I know that if the accounts are frozen, it is because you finally decided to stop shoveling. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. You could say that. Good, Grant said. It is about time. Now, listen to me. There is a narrative starting to form out there. People are saying the business is unstable. Your father is telling anyone who will listen that his daughter is having a breakdown and sabotaging the company. He is trying to paint you as the villain to save his own face. I expected that, I said, looking at the folder of evidence on my desk. I know you did, Grant replied. But here's the thing about business. Olivia, smart people don't listen to the noise. They look at the balance sheets. And everyone in Atlanta knows that you are the only reason Harper Coast Rentals hasn't gone under 10 years ago. You are the asset, not the liability. I stayed silent. It was the first time anyone outside of Evan had acknowledged my competence without attaching a request for a favor. I am consulting for a firm called North River Housing Group, Grant continued. They are a private equity group moving into the residential management sector. They are aggressive, they are well-funded, and they need a director of operations control. They need someone who knows how to spot a leak and plug it. They need a shark who knows the local market. He paused. I pitched you this morning. They want to meet you. My heart gave a sudden, hard thump against my ribs. Grant, I am technically still the CFO of a competitor. Are you? He asked. Or are you a hostage? The word hung in the air. There is more, Grant said. North River is looking to acquire market share. They know your family's business is distressed. If you come on board, part of the package could involve North River buying out your personal equity in Harper Coast Rentals. We know you hold 15% of the shares. We can structure a buyout at fair market value. You walk away with a check, a new title, and zero ties to the Harper mess. I closed my eyes. A buyout. For years. Those shares had been my handcuffs. They were illiquid assets. Paper wealth that I couldn't access because the family company never paid dividends. Only salaries. My parents used the profit for their lifestyle, and my shares were just a number on a tax return. If North River bought me out, I would have actual cash, and more importantly, I would have no legal obligation to my parents. I would be a stranger. Why would you do this for me? I asked. Because I need a director of operations who can tell me the truth when things are ugly, Grant said. And I have seen you tell your father no in a boardroom full of men. That is a rare skill. I am sending you the offer letter and the non-disclosure agreement. Read it. Do not let loyalty to people who abandoned you keep you poor. We hung up. 5 minutes later, my email chimed. I opened the document. The salary was 40% higher than what my father paid me. The benefits were comprehensive, but it was the buyout clause that made my hands shake. North River Housing Group agrees to purchase all outstanding Class B shares held by Olivia Harper upon commencement of employment. It was an exit door. It was wide open, bathed in light, but as I stared at it, the guilt crept in. It was a conditioned response, programmed into me since childhood. If I took this job, if I sold my shares to a competitor, I wasn't just leaving, I was nuking the bridge. My parents would lose their financial shield. They would have to deal with a private equity firm as a minority shareholder instead of their compliant daughter. They would be eaten alive. I would be destroying them, I whispered to the empty room. No, a voice said from the doorway. You would just be stopping the rescue. I turned. Evan had come home for his lunch break. He was leaning against the doorframe, holding a sandwich in a plastic bag. He must have seen the look on my face. I turned the laptop so he could see the offer. He read it in silence. He read the salary. He read the title. He read the buyout clause. Grant Sloan called, I explained, my voice trembling. He says I can leave. He says I can sell my shares and walk away. Evan looked at me. And if I do this, my family will scream that I'm a traitor, I said. They will say I sold them out to a corporate raider. They will say I profited from their downfall. Evan walked over and knelt beside my chair. He took my hands in his. Liv, he said gently. They forged your signature on $1 million loan. They left you alone at the altar. They are currently trying to gaslight you into taking the fall for their embezzlement. They are not your family. They are your abusers. He squeezed my hands. You do not need their permission to live, he said. You do not need their permission to succeed. If they drown because you stopped holding their heads above water, that is gravity, not betrayal. His words cut through the fog of guilt like a laser. Gravity, not betrayal. I looked back at the screen. I looked at the number representing my freedom. "I need to negotiate," I said, my voice hardening. "This offer is good, but the indemnification clause is too weak. If the bank comes after Harper Coast for the fraud, I need North River to shield me legally." Evan smiled. It was a proud, fierce smile. "That is my girl." I spent the next 4 hours working not as a daughter, but as a seasoned executive. I marked up the contract. I added a clause stating that my employment was contingent on a complete severance of all liability regarding the Harper Coast past accounts. I demanded that the buyout funds be placed in an irrevocable trust so my family couldn't sue to freeze them. I insisted on a confidentiality agreement that prevented North River from using my name in press releases regarding the Harper acquisition, to avoid public mudslinging. I sent the counteroffer back to Grant at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He replied in 10 minutes. "Agreed. We send the final papers tomorrow." I sat back. It was done. I had a new job. I had a parachute. Now I needed to build the landing zone. I drove to a bank on the other side of Denver. A bank where my parents had no accounts, no friends, and no influence. I opened a new checking account in my name only. I opened a high-yield savings account. I transferred my entire personal savings from the joint account I had once shared with my mother for emergencies. Watching the balance transfer was terrifying. I was severing the financial umbilical cord. I was making myself invisible to their monitoring systems. I drove home feeling a strange buzzing in my veins. It was the feeling of oxygen returning to a brain that had been hypoxic for years. But the silence from Atlanta was about to break. Darla Harper had instincts. They were predatory instincts, honed by years of manipulating social circles and weak-willed vendors. She could smell a shift in power. She must have realized that her threats were bouncing off me, and that her silence was not making me panic. She realized she was losing control. And for a narcissist, losing control is a fate worse than death. My phone rang at 6 in the evening. It wasn't Darla. It was Marvin Pike. Marvin was an old friend of my father's. He was a fixer of a different sort, a mediator who liked to smooth things over with bourbon and condescending advice. He was the kind of man who called women sweetheart while underpaying them. "Olivia," Marvin boomed, his voice thick with false joviality. "How is the bride?" "I am fine." "Marvin," I said, putting the phone on speaker and signaling Evan to listen. "What can I do for you?" "Well, now, I am just calling as a friend of the family," Marvin said. "I spoke to Ray this morning. He is beside himself. Olivia, just heartbroken. He feels there has been a terrible breakdown in communication." "Is that what he calls bank fraud?" I asked. "A breakdown in communication?" Marvin chuckled nervously. "Now, let's not use ugly words. Look, your parents are flying back tonight. They are cutting the trip short because they love you and they want to fix this. They were flying back because their cards didn't work and they probably couldn't afford another night at the hotel. But I let him talk." "They want to meet," Marvin said. "Tomorrow morning, at the office in Atlanta. We can do a video conference since you are in Denver. Just a family sit-down. Clear the air. Put everything on the table." "Why do they need you to ask me?" I asked. "Because they are afraid you won't pick up," Marvin admitted. "And because they want to make you an offer, a peace offering." I looked at Evan. He raised an eyebrow. I knew what this was. They were going to offer me a raise, or maybe a meaningless title promotion. They were going to try to buy me back with promises of future partnership, so I would unlock the accounts and sign the loan papers for the condo. They didn't know I had already sold my loyalty to the highest bidder. "I will meet with them," I said slowly. "But not to clear the air. I will meet to discuss the restructuring of the company." "Excellent," Marvin said, clearly relieved. "That is the spirit. Professional. Mature. I told Ray you would be reasonable. Shall we say 10 o'clock Eastern Time?" 10 o'clock, I said. "And Marvin?" "Yes, dear?" "Tell them to bring their lawyers," I said, "because I am bringing mine." There was a long pause on the other end. Marvin's joviality evaporated. "Is that necessary? Olivia?" It is just family. Not anymore, I said. Now it is just business. I hung up. I looked at Evan. They are coming for me. Let them come, Evan said, walking over to the fridge and pulling out a bottle of wine. They are expecting the daughter who cries when they yell. They are not expecting the director of operations for North River Housing. I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. No, I said. They are expecting a victim. They are going to get an audit. I opened my laptop again. I had 12 hours before the meeting. I needed to prepare my presentation. I wasn't going to bring tissues to this reunion. I was going to bring spreadsheets, the forged loan application, and my resignation letter. The trap was set, but this time, I wasn't the one caught in it. The video conference link arrived in my inbox at 9:55 in the morning. The subject line was simply, resolution. I sat at my desk in Denver, dressed in a sharp black blazer. I had applied makeup for the first time in days, not to look pretty, but to look armored. Evan sat in the armchair in the corner of the room, out of the camera's frame. He had a book open on his lap, but he wasn't reading, he was witnessing. At 10 o'clock exactly, I clicked the link. The screen filled with the image of a mahogany conference table in Atlanta. I recognized the room. It was the boardroom where I had spent thousands of hours presenting quarterly budgets to eyes that glazed over. My parents were not on the screen. Instead, sitting alone at the head of the table, was Marvin Pike. Marvin was a man who had built a career on being reasonable. He was 60 years old, with silver hair that was always perfectly coiffed and a smile that looked like it had been bought from a catalog. He was my father's oldest friend and the company's unofficial legal counsel, though he mostly specialized in making unpleasant problems go away quietly. "Olivia," Marvin said, leaning into the camera. His voice was warm, dripping with that particular southern cadence that sounds like honey but tastes like bourbon. "You look tired. Sweetheart, are you sleeping?" "I am fine, Marvin," I said. My voice was cool and clear. "Where are Ray and Darla?" "Your parents are nearby," Marvin said, waving a hand vaguely. "But we thought it best if we lowered the temperature a little bit. Emotions are high. You know how your mother gets. She is very passionate." "She screamed at my front door 2 days ago," I said. "I would call that aggressive, not passionate," Marvin chuckled, a low, rumbling sound meant to make me feel like I was overreacting. Now, we all say things we don't mean when we are stressed, and everyone is stressed right now, aren't they? It has been a hard week for the Harper family, on both sides. "There are no sides, Marvin," I said. "There is a balance sheet, and there is fraud. I am dealing with the former to prevent the latter." Marvin's smile tightened just a fraction. He laced his fingers together on the table. "Let's put the ugly words aside for a moment," he said. "I am here because your father wants to make things right. He acknowledges that mistakes were made regarding the timing of their trip. They feel terrible that they missed the ceremony. Truly, it was a logistical nightmare." I watched him lie. It was impressive, in a way. He was rewriting history in real time. "But," he continued, pivoting smoothly, "families fight, and then families forgive. That is what makes us strong. Ray wants you to come back to the table. Olivia, he knows the company needs you. You are the brains of the operation. After all, we all know that." He paused, waiting for the compliment to land. I stayed silent. "So," Marvin said, opening a leather folder in front of him, "here is the proposal. Ray is prepared to offer you the position of Executive Vice President. Officially, no more CFO title that makes you sound like a back-office clerk. You would be the number 2, and with that comes a salary adjustment. We are talking a 20% increase, effective immediately." He looked at me expectantly. A week ago, this offer would have been everything I wanted. Recognition, a title that matched my workload, a salary that actually reflected my value. Now, I just did the math in my head. A 20% raise on my current salary was still less than the starting offer from North River, and the title of vice president in a company that was leveraging its assets to buy illegal condos was like being named the captain of the Titanic after it hit the iceberg. "That is a generous offer," I said neutrally. "What are the terms?" Marvin's smile widened. He thought he had me. "No terms. Really. Just a return to normalcy. You unlock the accounts. You approve the pending wire for the Maui investment, which, by the way, is a brilliant strategic move by your mother to diversify the portfolio, and we all move forward. The Maui investment is a personal vacation home purchased with corporate collateral," I said. "Tomato. Marvin said dismissively. "It is a corporate asset that the family can use. It is a perk. You would get to use it too. Olivia, imagine taking Evan there for a second honeymoon, on the house." He said Evan's name with a slight pause, as if he had to remember it. "Is that all?" I asked. Marvin shifted in his chair. He cleared his throat. "Well, there is one small detail regarding the branding." "Branding?" "You know Harper Coast Rentals is a luxury brand," Marvin said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We sell a lifestyle, aspirations, old money, elegance. Your parents have spent 40 years cultivating that image." "I am aware," I said. "Right," Marvin said. "So, when you step up to vice president, you will be the face of the next generation. You will be at the galas, you will be in the magazines, and we need to make sure that image is consistent." I felt the air in the room change. Evan, in the corner, looked up from his book. "What are you saying?" "Marvin?" "It is delicate," Marvin said, looking pained. "But frankly, Olivia, your husband, he is a fine man. I am sure he is a wonderful teacher. But he doesn't quite fit the demographic we court. Teachers, public servants, it reads a little working class, for the brand." I stared at the screen. My blood ran cold. "Are you asking me to divorce him?" "Heavens, no," Marvin laughed, looking horrified. No, we respect the sanctity of marriage. We are just suggesting a public separation of spheres. You keep your marriage private, very private. Evan doesn't need to come to the ribbon cuttings. He doesn't need to be in the family Christmas card photo that goes to the investors. He can stay in the background. It is better for him, really. He wouldn't be comfortable in our world anyway." I looked at Evan. He was watching me. He didn't look angry. He looked sad, not for himself, but for me. He was watching them try to slice him out of my life like a tumor, just so I could fit into their picture frame. "So," I said slowly, "to be clear, you want me to run the company, fix the finances, and cover up the fraud. And in exchange, I get a fake title, a raise you can't afford, and I have to pretend my husband doesn't exist whenever a camera is around." "You are putting it rather harshly," Marvin said, frowning. "We are asking you to prioritize the legacy. Your mother feels that the wedding, well, the fact that you married him was a rebellious phase, but now it is time to be an adult, to be a Harper." It was the gaslighting in its purest form. They hadn't boycotted my wedding because they were selfish. They had boycotted it because my husband wasn't rich enough, and now they were willing to forgive me for marrying him, as long as I hid him in the closet. They wanted the daughter who made them money. They didn't want the woman who had a life. "Marvin," I said softly, "you can tell Ray and Darla something for me." "What is that, dear?" "Tell them to go to hell." Marvin's face went slack. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. The accounts remain frozen. The wire transfer remains unauthorized. And my husband will be eating dinner with me tonight at a restaurant that my parents can't afford because their credit cards are declined." "Olivia," Marvin snapped, the nice uncle mask falling off. "You are making a mistake. You are playing a dangerous game." "I am not playing," I said. "I am resigning." I didn't give him a chance to respond. I moved my mouse and clicked the red end call button. The screen went black. I sat there, breathing hard. The silence in the room was heavy. Evan stood up. He walked over and kissed the top of my head. "Working class," he chuckled. "I think that is the nicest thing anyone in your family has ever called me." "They are disgusting," I whispered. I knew they were vain. I didn't know they were this calculated. "Now you know," Evan said. "No more doubts." I didn't have to wait long for the fallout. The good cop routine had failed. Now came the bad cops. An hour later, my phone pinged with an email from Logan. The subject line was, "Can we start over?" I opened it, expecting an apology, but Logan was incapable of genuine reflection. "Liv, I heard about the call with Marvin. Look, don't listen to him. He is old school. I don't care about Evan. He is a cool guy. Whatever. But seriously, sis, you need to stop this. I am hurting here. The landlord in Nashville is going to lease the space to someone else by 5 o'clock today. I have investors lined up. This is my big break. If I lose this, I lose everything. Can we just hit reset? You release the $50,000 for me. Just for me, not for mom and dad. And I will be on your side. I will tell them to back off. We can be a team. Just you and me. The new generation. Please, don't make me beg. Love, Logan." I read it twice. It was a masterclass in manipulation. He was trying to drive a wedge between me and the parents, offering his loyalty in exchange for $50,000 of company money. He didn't care about me. He didn't care about the fraud. He just wanted his toy. He was asking me to be a co-conspirator. I hit reply. I didn't hesitate. "Logan, there is no side to be on. There is only the law. I cannot release funds for a venture that has not been vetted or approved by the board, regardless of who is asking. If your business plan relies on a handout from a frozen account, you don't have a business plan. You have a gambling addiction. I hope you find another way to fund your dream. But the Bank of Olivia is closed." I sent it. I felt a twinge of sadness. He was my little brother, after all. But it was quickly replaced by relief. I wasn't enabling him anymore. If he was going to fail, he was going to fail on his own merits. The response from the family was swift and nuclear. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, a courier arrived at my front door. He handed me a thick envelope. It was from a law firm in Atlanta, not Marvin Pike's friendly mediation firm, a litigation firm. I opened it in the kitchen. Notice of demand and cease and desist. To Olivia Harper. Re. Obstruction of business operations and breach of fiduciary duty. Dear Ms. Harper, we represent Harper Coast Rentals, Inc., and its majority shareholders, Ray and Darla Harper. You are hereby notified that your actions to freeze corporate assets, refuse legitimate payment authorizations, and lock administrative access constitute a material breach of your fiduciary duties as Chief Financial Officer. Your conduct has caused significant financial harm and reputational damage to the company. We demand that you immediately restore full access to all accounts and approve the pending transactions referenced in Schedule A, the Maui escrow. Failure to comply within 24 hours will result in legal action seeking damages, immediate termination for cause, and potential criminal liability for corporate sabotage. They were suing me. They were actually threatening to sue me for stopping them from stealing from themselves. I started to laugh. It was a dry, incredulous sound. "What is it?" Evan asked. I handed him the letter. "They are threatening me with corporate sabotage because I won't let Mom buy a condo with the payroll money." Evan read it. He frowned. "Can they do this?" "They can try," I said. I picked up my phone and took a picture of the letter. I sent it to Sarah Jenkins, my attorney. Her reply came 3 minutes later. She didn't text back. She called. "Olivia," Sarah said. I could hear the smile in her voice. "This is adorable." "Adorable?" I asked. "They are threatening to sue me for damages." "Let them," Sarah said. "This letter is a bluff. It is a scare tactic. They are hoping you are just an obedient daughter who gets scared by big words on legal stationery. But they made a fatal mistake." "What is that?" "They admitted in writing that they are ordering you to approve the Maui transaction," Sarah explained. "They just handed us proof of coercion. If they sue you, we enter discovery. And if we enter discovery, I get to subpoena the emails where your mother forged your signature. I get to depose the escrow agent in Hawaii. I get to pull every single credit card statement from the last 10 years. She laughed. A sharp, shark-like sound. Olivia, if they take this to court, your parents will be in prison before the opening statements are finished. They are handing you the gun and asking you to shoot them. So what do? I asked. Nothing, Sarah said. You ignore it, you let the 24-hour deadline pass, and while they are waiting for you to crumble, we finalize the North River deal. By the time they realize you aren't afraid, you will already be gone. I hung up the phone. I looked at the letter on the counter. Immediate termination for cause. They wanted to fire me? Fine, I was going to fire them first. I walked over to the trash can. I didn't shred the letter. I needed it for the evidence file, but I threw the envelope away. Evan, I said, do we have any champagne? I think so, he said. Why? Because, I said, I just realized something. They are powerless. They have no money, no leverage, and no shame. All they have is noise. And for the first time in 31 years, I wasn't listening. The collapse of a business reputation is not a slow leak. It is a dam breaking. For years, I had been the one patching the cracks in the dam, smoothing over the missed payments, charming the vendors, and ensuring that the facade of Harper Coast Rentals remained pristine. But now, I had stepped away from the wall, and the water was rushing through with terrifying speed. By Thursday morning, the business community knew money is a cowardly thing. It runs away at the first sign of instability. And Harper Coast Rentals was currently vibrating with instability. I sat in my home office, watching the fallout on my dual monitors. It started with the vendors, our linen supplier in Charleston. A man named Pete, who had known my father for 20 years, sent a formal email at 9 o'clock. He did not call. He did not ask how the family was. He simply stated that effective immediately, all future deliveries would be on a cash-on-delivery basis. The days of net 30 payment terms were over. He cited internal risk assessment as the reason, but I knew the truth. He had heard about the bounced checks. Then came the domino effect I had predicted. But even I was surprised by how fast it traveled. At 10:30, I received an automated alert from our satellite office in Scottsdale, Arizona. It was a high-end market where we managed 20 luxury estates. The alert was a system error indicating that the localized payroll run had failed. I clicked into the details. The operating account for the Southwest region was empty. My father had swept that account 2 days ago to cover the initial hold on his credit card in Hawaii, likely thinking he could put it back before Friday. He was wrong. The manager in Scottsdale, a sharp woman named Elena, called my cell phone 5 minutes later. Olivia, she said, her voice tight. My cleaning crew is standing in the lobby. Their checks bounced. They are refusing to turn over the units for the weekend arrivals. I have guests checking into $3 million homes in 4 hours, and the beds are stripped. I know, Elena, I said. I am sorry. I can't pay them with apologies, she snapped. I tried to use the company credit card to buy gift cards, just to keep them working, and the card was declined. What is going on? Is the company insolvent? The company is undergoing a liquidity crisis due to executive mismanagement, I said, choosing my words with legal precision. I recommend you tell the guests there is a maintenance emergency and rebook them at the Four Seasons. Do not promise them refunds from our system. We cannot process them right now. You want me to close the branch? She asked. Stunned. I want you to protect yourself, I said. Close the office for the weekend. Go home. Elena. There was a long silence. I am updating my resume, she said. You should, I replied. I hung up. A major branch was dark. That would cost us $10,000 in lost revenue just this weekend, and incalculable damage to our brand in Arizona. But that was just the operational failure. The social failure was far worse. The story of the wedding had escaped the containment field. Savannah is a city that loves to talk, but the hospitality industry is a global village. The wedding coordinator had likely told a caterer, who told a florist, who told a planner in Atlanta. I opened a tab for the Google reviews of Harper Coast Rentals. Usually, we had a 4.8-star rating. We prided ourselves on it. A new review had popped up an hour ago. 1 star. I was considering booking a villa with this company for my family reunion. Then I heard that the owners, Ray and Darla Harper, skipped their own daughter's wedding to go on a vacation. If they treat their own flesh and blood like that, imagine how they will treat you when your air conditioning breaks. No thank you. Character matters. I refreshed the page. Another one appeared. Disgusting behavior from the leadership. Family values? Yeah, right. I will be taking my business to a company that actually understands the word family. It wasn't just strangers, it was the community. People in our social circle were using the anonymity of the internet to punish my parents for a social transgression that violated the unwritten code of the South. You can be greedy, and you can be loud, but you do not humiliate your children in public. My mother, Darla, saw them too. She called me at noon. She wasn't screaming this time. The rage had burned itself out, replaced by a terrified, frantic sobbing that was almost harder to listen to. Olivia, she wept into the phone. Have you seen them? Have you seen what they are writing about me? I have seen them, I said. They are destroying us, she wailed. It is a witch hunt. Who told them? Did you tell them? Did you post this? I haven't posted a thing. Mother, I said calmly, I haven't spoken to a soul. This is the world reacting to what you did. You posted the photos on Instagram. You made it public. I was just trying to show we were happy, she cried. Why does everyone hate me? I am a good person. I donate to charity. I serve on the board. This is unfair. I am the victim here. I listened to her cry. It was the sound of a woman who had lived her entire life in a hall of mirrors, only to have someone finally turn on the ugly fluorescent lights. She didn't care about the Scottsdale office closing. She didn't care about the unpaid cleaners. She cared that strangers thought she was a bad mother. Make it stop. Olivia, she begged. You are good with computers. Delete them, please. I can't walk into the country club if these reviews are up. They will stare at me. I can't delete the internet. Mom, I said. And even if I could, I wouldn't. This is the cost of the ticket you bought. You are enjoying this, she whispered, her voice trembling. You like seeing me suffer. I don't feel anything at all, I said honestly. I just want my name off the loan. The loan, she gasped, as if remembering the actual financial cliff she was standing on. The condo. The escrow agent called Ray. He said if the wire doesn't hit by tomorrow close of business, they are pulling the contract. They are going to keep the deposit. Olivia, $50,000. Gone. Then you better find $50,000, I said. Maybe you can return the scarves. You are a monster, she sobbed, and hung up. I didn't have time to process her insults. I had work to do. I was finalizing the paperwork for North River Housing Group. I had spent the morning transferring my digital files, not the company data, but my personal work product, my templates, my contacts, onto an encrypted drive. I was scrubbing my presence from the Harper Coast servers. Then, at 2 o'clock, my father called. Ray Harper did not sob. Ray Harper did not beg. He blustered. He used volume and intimidation, the tools of a man who had always gotten his way by being the loudest person in the room. Pick up the phone, Olivia, he boomed the moment I answered. Hello? Ray, I said. I am done playing games with you, he said. His voice was low and shaking with suppressed fury. I just got off the phone with our lawyers. Real lawyers, not Marvin. I received their letter, I said. The one threatening to sue me for doing my job. You think that is funny? He growled. You think you are clever? Let me tell you what is going to happen. You are going to unlock those accounts within the hour. You are going to sign the authorization for the Maui wire, and then you are going to resign. If you don't, I will drag you into court and I will bleed you dry. I will spend every dime I have to make sure you never work in finance again. You don't have any dimes, Ray, I said. That is the problem. I have assets, he shouted. I built this company. It is mine. You are nothing but a glorified secretary I allowed to play boss." "If I am just a secretary," I asked, "then why do you need my signature to buy your house?" There was a silence on the line, a heavy breathing silence. "You are ungrateful," he said. "We gave you everything. We gave you a job when nobody else would hire a fresh graduate. We gave you a lifestyle." "I earned my job," I said, "and I paid for my lifestyle. And now, I am paying for yours. But that stops today. I am taking you to court, Olivia," he said. "I mean it. I will sue you for breach of contract. I will sue you for damages. I will ruin you." "Talk to Sarah Jenkins," I said. "She is accepting service on my behalf." "Who the hell is Sarah Jenkins?" "My lawyer," I said. "And Ray? She is really looking forward to the discovery phase. She wants to see the handwriting analysis on that loan application." Ray hung up. He slammed the phone down so hard it hurt my ear. I sat there for a moment, listening to the dial tone. They were desperate. They were lashing out like trapped animals. They knew the walls were closing in, and they had no idea how to stop it, because I had always been the one to stop it for them. I forwarded the log of the call to Sarah. Then, I turned my attention to the final piece of the puzzle, the exit. I had signed the electronic offer letter from North River an hour ago. The deal was done. The funds for my shares, a sum that would secure my financial independence for years, were sitting in an escrow account. Waiting for the final transfer of stock certificates, I logged into the Harper Coast executive email server one last time. I needed to send my formal resignation letter. I wanted it to be time-stamped and archived before they could fire me. I opened my inbox. Because I still had administrative privileges, I could see the calendar for the entire executive team. It was a feature I had installed to coordinate meetings. A notification popped up. It was a calendar invite sent by my father's secretary 10 minutes ago. Subject: Emergency Board Meeting. Personnel Action. Time: Friday, 9:00 a.m. Attendees: Ray Harper, Darla Harper, Marvin Pike, Corporate Counsel. Location: Executive Conference Room A. I clicked on the invite to see the agenda. It was attached as a Word document. I opened it. The agenda was short. Item 1. Formal removal of Olivia Harper as CFO. Item 2. Motion to file civil complaint regarding misappropriation of corporate authority. Item 3. Public statement release regarding leadership transition due to health and personal instability of former CFO. Item 4. Adoption of resolution to authorize Maui financing via emergency bylaws. I stared at item 3. Health and personal instability. They weren't just going to fire me, they were going to smear me. They were going to tell the world, the investors, the employees, the clients, that I was crazy, that I had had a breakdown, that the reason the accounts were frozen and the bills weren't paid wasn't because they were thieves, but because I was mentally unstable. They were going to use the narrative of the jilted bride to paint me as a hysterical woman who snapped and tried to burn down the family business out of spite. It was evil. It was brilliant. And if I didn't stop it, it might actually work. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. It was colder than the ice in my freezer. They wanted a meeting? They wanted to discuss my performance? I looked at the time. It was Thursday evening. The meeting was tomorrow morning. I wasn't going to send my resignation email. Not yet. If I resigned now, they would hold the meeting without me. They would spin the story. They would release the statement. But if I was still the CFO, if I was still a shareholder, I had a right to be in that room. I picked up my phone and called Evan. "Hey," he answered. "How are you holding up?" "I am fine," I said. "But plans have changed. I am not emailing my resignation." "Why not?" "Because they are holding a meeting tomorrow to frame me," I said. "They are going to tell everyone I had a mental breakdown. They are going to use the wedding to destroy my professional reputation." "What are you going to do?" Evan asked. "I am going to Atlanta," I said. "Live." "No," I said firmly. "I am not running away. I am not sending a letter from a safe distance. I am going to walk into that boardroom, and I am going to look them in the eye, and I am going to burn their lie to the ground. I am coming with you, Evan said. No, I said. You stay here. You keep the house safe. This is between me and the Harpers. It ends where it started. I booked the red-eye flight to Atlanta. It left in 3 hours. I went to my closet and pulled out my suit, not the black one I was wearing, the navy blue power suit, the one I wore when I closed the deal that saved the company 5 years ago. I packed my briefcase. I put in the loan documents with the forged signature. I put in the bank audit logs showing the Hawaii spending. I put in the emails from Logan and Darla. I put in the threatening letter from Ray. I was going to their meeting, and I was going to bring the truth with me. They wanted to talk about stability. I would show them exactly who had been holding the building up, and exactly what happened now that she was walking away. The red-eye flight from Denver to Atlanta landed at 5:30 in the morning. The airport was in that strange, suspended state between the late-night cleaners and the first wave of business travelers. I dragged my carry-on bag through the terminal, my eyes gritty from lack of sleep. My navy blue suit slightly wrinkled but still formidable. I had come home, but it did not feel like home. It felt like a crime scene I was returning to investigate. I picked up my rental car, a nondescript sedan that smelled of industrial lemon cleaner, and drove toward the city. The Georgia humidity hit me the moment I rolled down the window, thick, heavy, and full of memories. This was the air I had breathed for 20 years while I tried to be the perfect daughter. I pulled into a 24-hour diner near the Perimeter Highway to grab coffee and review my files before the 9 o'clock showdown. I needed caffeine, and I needed silence. My phone rang at 6:15 in the morning. I looked at the screen, expecting Sarah Jenkins or perhaps another threat from my father, but the caller ID displayed a name I did not recognize. Marlo Stone. Estate planning. I frowned. Marlo was my mother's maiden name. It was my grandmother's name. I answered. This is Olivia. Ms. Harper, a man's voice said. It was an old voice, dry and precise, like turning the pages of a very old book. My name is Arthur Stone. I was the personal attorney for your grandmother, June Marlowe. My breath hitched. My grandmother passed away 8 years ago. Mr. Stone. She did, he agreed, but her instructions were quite specific regarding the timing of this conversation. I have been monitoring public records and your employment status, as per her directive. I received a notification yesterday that you have entered into a preliminary employment agreement with North River Housing Group and have initiated a divestment of your shares in Harper Coast Rentals. Is this correct? I set my coffee cup down. My hand was trembling slightly. How do you know that? I am the executor of the June Marlowe Liberty Trust, he said. It is a blind trust established 12 years ago. The terms of the trust are strict. The beneficiary, you, was not to be informed of its existence until 2 conditions were met. He paused, and I could hear him adjusting his glasses. Condition 1, he read. The beneficiary must be over the age of 30. I am 31, I whispered. Condition 2, he continued. The beneficiary must have severed financial dependence on Darla and Ray Harper, and must have secured independent employment unrelated to the family business. The trust was designed to remain dormant as long as you were under their control. It was only to be activated when you walked away. I felt the diner spin slightly around me. Grandma June, my mother, Darla, always spoke of June with a sneer. She called her mousy and unambitious. June had been a librarian. She lived in a small house with too many books and a garden full of tomatoes. She never wore designer clothes. She never went to galas. When I was a child, she was the only one who didn't ask me about my grades or my appearance. She just gave me peppermint tea and let me read in her armchair. What does this mean? I asked. It means, Mr. Stone said, that since you have signed the offer with North River, the trust has vested, the assets are now yours. It is a portfolio of blue-chip stocks and bonds that June accumulated over 50 years of quiet investing. The current value is approximately $850,000. I gasped. 800,000? She was a very frugal woman, Mr. Stone said with a hint of pride. And she was very good at compound interest. But there is something else. She left a letter. She made me promise to read it to you the moment the conditions were met. Would you like to hear it? Yes, I choked out. Please. There was a rustling of paper on the other end of the line. Then, Mr. Stone began to read, his voice softening to mimic the cadence of the woman I had loved so much. My dearest Olivia, if you are hearing this, it means you finally did it. You finally ran. I know you think I didn't see you. I was always the quiet one in the corner at Thanksgiving, while your mother was shouting about her new car, and your father was bragging about his deals. But I saw you. I saw a 12-year-old girl fixing the table settings because Darla was too busy drinking wine. I saw a 16-year-old girl doing the family taxes because Ray couldn't be bothered to learn the software. I saw the way they looked at you. They didn't look at you like a daughter. They looked at you like a crutch. And I knew that one day, the weight of carrying them would be too heavy. I knew they would break your heart, not because they are evil, but because they are empty. They need to consume everything around them to feel full. And I was terrified they would consume you. I couldn't give you this money while you were still in their web. Darla would have found a way to take it. She would have guilted you into buying a boat or covering a bad investment. So I locked it away. I made it a prize for your freedom. Use this to buy a house that they don't have a key to. Use it to build a life where you don't have to apologize for being smarter than the people in the room. You are not cold. Olivia, you are not difficult. You are just the only adult in a house full of children. I am so proud of you, not for what you do, but for who you are when you stop doing for them. Love, Grandma June. I was crying. I was sitting in a plastic booth in a Waffle House off the highway, surrounded by truck drivers and shift workers, and I was weeping openly. I wasn't crying because of the $800,000. Although, the irony was not lost on me. My parents were currently committing fraud to get $50,000, while the mousy grandmother they mocked had secretly built a fortune almost 20 times that size. I was crying because for my whole life, I thought I was the problem. My mother had told me I was too rigid. My father had told me I was too serious. They made me feel like my desire for order and safety was a defect. They made me feel like I was unlovable because I wouldn't just go with the flow of their chaos. But June had seen it. She had seen the truth. I wasn't defective. I was being used. Ms. Harper? Mr. Stone asked gently. Are you still there? I am here, I said, wiping my face with a rough paper napkin. Thank you. You have no idea what that means to me. I think I do, he said. June was a very wise woman. The funds will be wired to your new account by noon today. You are free, Olivia, legally and financially. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the dark window. The woman looking back at me was different than the one who had boarded the plane. That woman had been angry. This woman was validated. I had an exit strategy before. Now, I had a fortress. I checked my watch. 7:30 in the morning. My phone pinged again. This time, it was Sarah Jenkins. Olivia, heads up, I just got a back-channel tip from a paralegal at the firm your father hired. They are drafting a document called the Incident Report regarding O. Harper. I typed back, "What is in it?" Sarah called me immediately. "It is nasty. Liv," she said. "They are building a timeline. They are claiming that your erratic behavior started 6 months ago. They are logging every time you raised your voice, every time you missed a meeting, every time you refused a request. They are trying to build a medical case." "A medical case?" I asked, confused. "They want to argue that you had a nervous breakdown triggered by pre-wedding stress and that your freezing of the accounts was an act of mental instability, not fiduciary responsibility." Sarah explained. "They are going to present this to the bank. If the bank believes you were mentally compromised, they might reverse your freeze orders and let your parents access the cash to save the condo deal." "They are calling me crazy to get the money," I said flatly. "Yes," Sarah said. "It is their Hail Mary. If they can discredit you as a witness, they can discredit the fraud. They are going to ambush you with this at the meeting. They will have a doctor's note, probably from one of Ray's golf buddies, suggesting you need rest and recovery. I felt a surge of adrenaline. It wasn't fear, it was the thrill of the hunt. Let them try, I said. Olivia, you don't have to go, Sarah warned. We can handle this by email. If you walk into that room, they are going to gaslight you until you question your own name. No, I said. They can't gaslight me anymore. June turned the lights on. Who is June? My silent partner, I said. Sarah, send me the final North River contract with the timestamp, and send me the file where we log the IP address of the device that signed the loan application. You already have them. Good, I said. I am going in. I paid my bill. I went to the restroom and splashed cold water on my face. I reapplied my lipstick. It was a deep, blood-red shade. War paint. I drove the remaining miles to the Harper Coast Rentals headquarters in Buckhead. The building was a beautiful 2-story brick structure with white columns. It looked respectable. It looked stable. It looked like the kind of place where family values were etched in stone. I parked my rental car in the spot marked Guest. My old spot, marked CFO, was empty. But I didn't take it. I wasn't the CFO anymore. I was something much more dangerous. I walked into the lobby. The receptionist, a young girl named Kaylee, who I had hired last year, looked up. Her eyes went wide. Ms. Harper? She stammered. I thought you were in Denver. Your dad said you were sick. I am feeling much better. Kaylee, I said, smiling. Is the board in the conference room? Yes, ma'am, she said, reaching for the phone. I should call up. Don't bother, I said, walking past the desk. I know the way. I walked down the long hallway lined with framed photos of my parents shaking hands with local celebrities. I saw the photo of the ribbon cutting from 10 years ago. I was in the background of that photo, holding the giant scissors while my father waved to the crowd, always in the background, always holding the sharp objects. I reached the double mahogany doors of the boardroom. I could hear voices inside, my father's booming baritone, Marvin Pike's soothing murmur, and my mother's voice, high and anxious. Just tell them she is off her meds, Darla was saying. It is simple. We say she has been struggling since the engagement. The poor thing just snapped. It is a tragedy. Really. We are doing this to help her. And the bank will buy it? Ray asked. If we cry enough, Darla said. I can cry. You know I can cry. I didn't knock. I placed my hand on the brass handle. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of lemon polish and hypocrisy. I thought about the empty chairs at my wedding. I thought about the forged signature. I thought about the years of fixing their messes in the dark. And then I thought about June Marlowe, sitting in her armchair, saving every penny so that one day I could do this. I pushed the doors open. They slammed against the walls with a satisfying crash. 3 heads snapped toward me. Ray was at the head of the table. Darla was to his right. Marvin was to his left. There were stacks of paper in front of them. The incident report. For a second, there was total silence. They looked like deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. Olivia, Ray said, half rising from his chair. His face went from shock to a flushed, angry red. What are you doing here? You are supposed to be... Sick? I finished for him. Crazy? Off my meds? I walked into the room. I didn't sit down. I placed my briefcase on the table and popped the latches. The sound was loud in the quiet room. I am afraid the reports of my insanity have been greatly exaggerated, I said. Now, Olivia, Marvin started, putting on his mediator face. We were just discussing how to best support you during this difficult time. Cut it, Marvin, I said. I heard you through the door. You were discussing how to frame me to cover up a felony. Darla stood up. She was wearing a black dress, looking very somber, like she was dressed for a funeral. My funeral. How dare you, she hissed. We are trying to save this family. We are trying to save your reputation. You are out of control. Am I? I asked. I pulled out a single file folder. I slid it down the long, polished table. It spun and came to a stop right in front of my father. "That is the handwriting analysis from the forensic expert my lawyer hired yesterday," I said. "It confirms with 99% certainty that the signature on the Aloha escrow loan application was not written by me, but was a tracing produced by someone with access to my personnel files." Ray stared at the folder. He didn't open it. "And," I continued, pulling out a second document, "this is the IP log from the bank. The loan was digitally authorized from a device named Darla's iPad Pro located at the Grand Wailea Resort in Maui, at a time when I was in Savannah, getting married." I looked at my mother. Her face had gone the color of ash. "You aren't dealing with a hysterical daughter, Mom," I said softly. "You are dealing with a witness." "You wouldn't," Ray whispered. "You wouldn't give that to the police. We are your parents. And I am the person you threw under the bus to buy a condo," I said. "But here is the good news. I am not here to arrest you. I don't care enough about you to put you in jail." I pulled out the third document, the offer from North River, and the resignation letter. "I am here to say goodbye. I am leaving," I said. "I have sold my shares. I have accepted a new position, and I am taking my name, my credit score, and my talent with me." "You can't sell," Ray shouted. "We have right of first refusal." "Read the bylaws, Ray," I said. "The ones you never bothered to read. If the company is in default on its operating obligations, which you are, because you stole the rent money, the right of first refusal is waived. I sold to North River. They are your partners now." I smiled. "And they are very excited to audit the books." The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a structure collapsing. "So," I said, closing my briefcase, "you can keep your meeting. You can write your report about how crazy I am, but just know that if you release one word of it, I release the handwriting analysis to the district attorney. Mutually assured destruction." I looked at Darla. She was trembling. "You wanted a show," I told her. "You wanted drama. Well, curtains down. Mother." I turned around and walked toward the door. "Olivia," Ray shouted, "if you walk out that door, you are finished in this town. You hear me? Finished." I stopped. I didn't turn back. "No, Dad," I said. "I'm just getting started." I walked out. I walked past the receptionist. I walked out into the humid Atlanta air. I checked my phone. The wire transfer from the June Marlowe Trust had just hit my account. Balance, $850,000. I got into my rental car. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I put the car in drive and headed for the airport. I had a flight to catch. I had a husband waiting for me. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't wondering if I had done the right thing. I knew. I was finally the person Grandma June saw. The fallout from my appearance in the boardroom was immediate and catastrophic, but not in the way my father had threatened. He had promised to ruin me. Instead, he had inadvertently summoned the very people who would dismantle his kingdom. The final confrontation did not happen in the Harper Coast Rentals office. It happened 48 hours later, in the neutral, sterile conference room of a corporate law firm in downtown Atlanta. This was the meeting I had forced into existence by handing over the forensic analysis. This was the meeting where the partners, the bank representatives, and the legal team from North River Housing Group were finally present. The room was freezing. I sat on one side of the long glass table, flanked by Sarah Jenkins and a representative from North River. On the other side sat my parents, Ray and Darla, and my brother, Logan. They looked diminished, without the familiar backdrop of their own office, stripped of their home court advantage. They just looked like three frightened people in expensive clothes that they could no longer afford. Marvin Pike was there too, but he was silent. He knew he was out of his depth. The meeting began with the bank's legal counsel, a man named Mr. Henderson, who had eyes like flint. He placed a recording device on the table. "We are here to resolve the matter of the contested security interest regarding the Maui property," Henderson said, "and to address the allegations of internal control failures at Harper Coast Rentals." Ray leaned forward. He tried to summon his old bluster, that booming voice that used to intimidate contractors. "There is no failure," Ray declared, glaring at me. "This is a family dispute. My daughter is upset about a personal matter. She is vindictive. She is trying to sabotage a legitimate business expansion because she feels neglected. We have prepared a statement regarding her mental state." He reached for the incident report they had drafted, the lie they wanted to sell. "Stop," I said. I didn't shout. I just cut the air with the word. I opened my laptop. "Mr. Henderson," I said, ignoring my father completely. "I am not here to discuss feelings. I am here to discuss data. You have the forensic handwriting analysis, but I would like to direct your attention to Exhibit B." I projected a slide onto the screen at the end of the room. It was a timeline of the company emails. "My parents claim I authorized the Maui purchase," I said, my voice steady. "They claim I was fully aware. However, this email chain from 3 months ago shows Darla Harper explicitly instructing the accounting team to hide the escrow line item in the quarterly report. She used the phrase, 'Don't let Olivia see this until it is done.'" Darla gasped. She looked at Ray. "I thought you deleted that." "Nothing is ever deleted." "Mother," I said. "Not when you back up the server to the cloud." I clicked to the next slide. "And here," I continued, "is a comparison of the travel expenses for the so-called business trip to Hawaii versus the industry standard for networking events. $8,000 for a private cabana, $4,000 for a sunset cruise, $2,000 for spa treatments. There is no business justification for these expenses. This is embezzlement." "It was networking," Ray shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "You don't understand how deals are made. You have to spend money to make money." "You have to spend your money," I corrected him. "Not the payroll money, and certainly not the money secured by a fraudulent loan against the company assets." "It wasn't fraudulent," Darla shrieked. She was losing her composure rapidly. "You signed it. You know you signed it. You are just lying now to get back at us for the wedding." This was the moment. The trap was set. "I did not sign it," I said clearly. "And the bank knows I didn't sign it. That is why we are here." "You did," Logan suddenly piped up. He had been sulking in his chair, scrolling on his phone. But now he jumped into the fight. He wanted to defend his parents. He wanted to be the hero. "I saw you," Logan said, pointing a finger at me. "I was in the office that day. Mom brought you the stack of papers for the state filing. She told me later that she got you to sign the loan papers by slipping them into the pile. She said you were too busy to notice." The room went completely silent. The air conditioning hummed. Mr. Henderson from the bank stopped writing. Sarah Jenkins smiled a small, terrifying smile. Logan looked around, confused. "What? I am proving she signed it." "No, you idiot," Ray whispered, closing his eyes. "You just admitted we tricked her." I looked at Logan. "Thank you, brother," I said softly. "You just confirmed on the record that I was misled about the nature of the documents. That is the definition of fraud in the inducement." Darla's face drained of all color. She looked at the bank representative. She realized, finally, that there was no PR spin that could fix this. She wasn't dealing with a family squabble anymore. She was dealing with a confession. "Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "I think we have heard enough," he said. "Mr. and Mrs. Harper, the bank is invoking the immediate acceleration clause on all outstanding credit lines. We are also freezing the Maui escrow transaction permanently. The funds will be returned to the corporate account to cover the operational shortfalls." "You can't do that?" Darla cried. "We will lose the condo. We will lose the deposit." "You are lucky you aren't losing your freedom, Mrs. Harper," Henderson said coldly. "The only reason we are not referring this to the district attorney immediately is because Ms. Olivia Harper has negotiated a settlement to protect the company's employees." Ray looked at me. He looked old. The bluster was gone. "What settlement?" I slid a document across the table. "The terms are simple," I said. "1, Darla is removed from all financial authority. She loses her company credit card. She loses her access to the bank portal. She is purely a figurehead with zero spending power. Darla made a choking sound. I am the owner. Not anymore, I said. 2. The company will undergo a mandatory restructuring. North River Housing Group is acquiring a 49% stake in Harper Coast Rentals effectively immediately. In exchange for injecting enough capital to save you from bankruptcy, they will control the board. They will control the checkbook. And 3, I finished, you will sign this release. It indemnifies me from all past, present, and future liabilities. It confirms that the loan application was an error, and it buys out my remaining shares at the full valuation. Ray stared at the paper. You are selling us out. You are letting strangers take over my company. I am saving the company from you, I said. If you don't sign, Mr. Henderson calls the police, and I walk away, and by Monday morning, the bank forecloses on everything. The choice is yours. You can be a minority owner, or you can be an inmate. Ray looked at Darla. She was weeping into her hands. He looked at Logan, who was staring at the table, realizing he had just sunk the ship. Ray picked up the pen. His hand shook. He signed. Are you happy? He asked, pushing the paper back to me. You won. You beat your own family. I picked up the document. I checked the signature. It was real this time. I didn't want to beat you, Dad, I said. I just wanted you to see me. But you never looked up from the mirror. I stood up. I packed my laptop. I nodded to Sarah and Mr. Henderson. Olivia, Darla whispered. She looked up, her mascara running down her face. Where are you going? I am going home, I said. My real home. But what about us? She asked. Who is going to run the payroll? Who is going to handle the taxes? I stopped at the door. I looked back at them one last time. I hear North River has excellent accountants, I said. Good luck. I walked out of the room, I walked out of the building, and for the first time in 31 years, I didn't look back to see if they were following. 6 months later, the rain in Portland, Oregon, was different from the rain in Georgia. It was soft, misty, and persistent. It made everything green. It smelled of pine needles and damp earth. I stood on the back deck of our new house. It wasn't a mansion. It was a craftsman bungalow with a peeling blue paint job that Evan and I were slowly fixing up on the weekends. But it was ours. The deed was in our names. The mortgage was paid by our salaries. My salary as the Director of Operations for North River's West Coast Division, and Evan's salary as a history teacher at the local high school. We were hosting a barbecue. The yard was full of people, not connections, not investors, friends. Sarah Jenkins had flown out for the weekend. She was laughing near the grill, holding a beer. My cousin Madison, the one who had posted the photo from Hawaii, was there too. She had apologized to me 3 months ago, admitting that Darla had pressured everyone to go on the trip and that she had felt terrible ever since. I forgave her. She was family. But on my terms now, and sitting in a lawn chair, looking at the garden with a content smile, was Mr. Stone, the executor of Grandma June's trust. I had invited him. I wanted him to see what June's money had built. It hadn't built an empire. It had built a sanctuary. Evan walked up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder. You okay? He asked. I am perfect, I said. I looked at the mantelpiece inside the living room, visible through the glass door. There was a framed photo there. It was our wedding photo. Just the two of us, standing at the altar in Savannah. In the background, if you looked closely, you could see the empty chairs. But I didn't see the emptiness anymore. I saw the space where I had finally learned to stand on my own. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a notification from LinkedIn. Ray Harper has viewed your profile. I smiled. I knew what he was seeing. He was seeing my new title. He was seeing the articles about North River's record-breaking quarter. He was seeing a woman who was thriving. I heard through the grapevine that things back in Atlanta were stable, which was code for boring. Darla had been forced to resign from the charity board because she couldn't make the donation pledge. Ray was reporting to a 28-year-old manager from North River who made him submit receipts for every lunch. Logan was working as a bartender at a chain restaurant, saving up for his next big idea. They were living the life they could afford, and so was I. Darla had thought that skipping my wedding to go to Hawaii would be the story she told for the rest of her life. A flex of power, a demonstration of who mattered. She thought she could come back and bang on my door and I would open it, just like I always did. But 3 days later, she was screaming on my porch because for the first time in history, the lock didn't turn. She learned the hardest lesson of all. You can't abandon people and expect them to stay where you left them. I put my phone back in my pocket. I turned to Evan. "Burger or hot dog?" I asked. "Both," he said. "We can afford it." We laughed. The sound drifted up into the gray, beautiful sky, lighter than air. Thank you so much for listening to Olivia's story. It was a long journey from that empty aisle in Savannah to the rainy peace of Portland, and I am so glad you walked it with us. I would love to know where you are listening from right now. Are you in a busy city, a quiet room, or maybe on a drive? Let me know in the comments below so we can say hello. If you enjoyed seeing Karma finally catch up with the Harpers, please consider subscribing to the Helena Revenge Stories channel. Hit that like button to support the storytelling. And if you really want to help this story reach more people who need a little justice in their lives, smash that hype button. I will see you in the next drama. Stay strong.